Have you ever dreamed of waking up to the sound of mountain bells, chasing goats across sunny meadows, or sipping warm goat's milk with a mischievous friend? Meet Heidi, a bright-eyed little girl with a heart full of wonder, whose adventures begin when she travels to the high peaks of the Swiss Alps in this timeless bedtime story for kids. Chapter 12. For several days, Miss Rottenmeier had been wandering silently about the house. When she went from room to room or along the corridors, she would often glance back as if she were afraid that somebody was following her. If she had to go to the upper floor, where the gorgeous guest rooms were, or to the lower story, where the big ballroom was situated, she always told Tynette to come with her. The strange thing was that none of the servants dared to go anywhere alone and always found an excuse to ask each other's company, which requests were always granted. The cook, who had been in the house for many years, would often shake her head and mutter, "That I should live to see this." Something strange and weird was happening in the house. Every morning, when the servants came downstairs, they found the front door wide open. At first, everybody had thought that the house must have been robbed, but nothing was missing. Every morning it was the same, despite the double locks that were put on the door. At last, John and Sebastian, taking courage, prepared themselves to watch through a night to see who was the ghost. Armed and provided with some strengthening liquor, they repaired to a room downstairs. First they talked, but soon, getting sleepy, they leaned silently back in their chairs. When the clock from the old church tower struck 1, Sebastian awoke and roused his comrade, which was no easy matter. At last, however, John was wide awake, and together they went out into the hall. The same moment a strong wind put out the light that John held in his hand. Rushing back, he nearly upset Sebastian, who stood behind him, and pulling the butler back into the room, he locked the door in furious haste. When the light was lit again, Sebastian noticed that John was deadly pale and trembling like an aspen leaf. Sebastian, not having seen anything, asked anxiously, "What is the matter? What did you see?" The door was open and a white form was on the stairs. It went up and was gone in a moment, gasped John. Cold shivers ran down the butler's back. They sat without moving till the morning came, and then, shutting the door, they went upstairs to report to the housekeeper what they had seen. The lady, who was waiting eagerly, heard the tale and immediately sat down to write to Mr. Sesame. She told him that fright had paralyzed her fingers and that terrible things were happening in the house. Then followed a tale of the appearance of the ghost. Mr. Sesame replied that he could not leave his business, and advised Miss Rottenmeier to ask his mother to come to stay with them, for Mrs. Sesame would easily dispatch the ghost. Miss Rottenmeier was offended with the tone of the letter, which did not seem to take her account seriously. Mrs. Sesame also replied that she could not come, so the housekeeper decided to tell the children all about it. Clara, at the uncanny tale, immediately exclaimed that she would not stay alone another moment, and that she wished her father to come home. The housekeeper arranged to sleep with the frightened child, while Heidi, who did not know what ghosts were, was perfectly unmoved. Another letter was dispatched to Mr. Sesame, telling him that the excitement might have serious effects on his daughter's delicate constitution, and mentioning several misfortunes that might probably happen if he did not relieve the household from this terror. This brought Mr. Sesame. Going to his daughter's room after his arrival, he was overjoyed to see her as well as ever. Clara was also delighted to see her father. "What new tricks has the ghost played on you, Miss Rottenmeier?" asked Mr. Sesame with a twinkle in his eye. "It is no joke, Mr. Sesame," replied the lady seriously. "I am sure you will not laugh tomorrow. Those strange events indicate that something secret and horrible has happened in this house in days gone by." "Is that so? This is new to me," remarked Mr. Sesame. "But will you please not suspect my venerable ancestors? Please call Sebastian. I want to speak to him alone." Mr. Sesame knew that the two were not on good terms, so he said to the butler, "Come here, Sebastian, and tell me honestly if you have played the ghost for Miss Rottenmeier's pastime." "No, upon my word, master, you must not think that," replied Sebastian frankly. "I do not like it quite myself." "Well, I'll show you and John what ghosts look like by day. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, strong young men like you. Now go at once to my old friend, Dr. Classen, and tell him to come to me at 9 o'clock tonight. Tell him that I came from Paris especially to consult him, and that I want him to sit up all night with me. Do you understand me, Sebastian?" "Yes, indeed. I shall do as you say, Mr. Sesame." Mr. Sesame then went up to Clara's room to quiet and comfort her. Punctually at 9 o'clock the doctor arrived. Though his hair was gray, his face was still fresh, and his eyes were lively and kind. When he saw his friend, he laughed aloud and said, "Well, well, you look pretty healthy for one who needs to be watched all night." "Have patience, my old friend," replied Mr. Sesame. "I am afraid the person we have to sit up for will look worse, but first we must catch him." "What? Then somebody is sick in this house. What do you mean?" "Far worse, doctor, far worse. A ghost is in the house. My house is haunted." When the doctor laughed, Mr. Sesame continued, "I call that sympathy. I wish my friend Miss Rottenmeier could hear you. She is convinced that an old Sesame is wandering about, expiating some dreadful deed." "How did she make his acquaintance?" asked the doctor, much amused. Mr. Sesame then explained the circumstances. He said that the matter was either a bad joke which an acquaintance of the servants was playing in his absence, or it was a gang of thieves, who, after intimidating the people, would surely rob his house by and by. With these explanations, they entered the room where the two servants had watched before. A few bottles of wine stood on the table, and two bright candelabra shed a brilliant light. Two revolvers were ready for emergencies. They left the door only partly open, for too much light might drive the ghost away. Then, sitting down comfortably, the two men passed their time by chatting, taking a sip now and then. "The ghost seems to have spied us and probably won't come today," said the doctor. "We must have patience. It is supposed to come at 1, replied his friend. So they talked till 1 o'clock. Everything was quiet, and not a sound came from the street. Suddenly the doctor raised his finger. "S.H., Sesame, don't you hear something?" While they both listened, the bar was unfastened, the key was turned, and the door flew open. Mr. Sesame seized his revolver. "You are not afraid, I hope," said the doctor, getting up. "Better be cautious," whispered Mr. Sesame, seizing the candelabrum in the other hand. The doctor followed with his revolver and the light, and so they went out into the hall. On the threshold stood a motionless white form, lighted up by the moon. "Who is there?" thundered the doctor, approaching the figure. It turned and uttered a low shriek. There stood Heidi, with bare feet and in her white nightgown, looking bewildered at the bright light and the weapons. She was shaking with fear, while the two men were looking at her in amazement. "Sesame, this seems to be your little water carrier," said the doctor. "Child, what does this mean?" asked Mr. Sesame. "What did you want to do? Why have you come down here?" Pale from fright, Heidi said, "I do not know." The doctor came forward now. "Sesame, this case belongs to my field. Please go and sit down while I take her to bed." Putting his revolver aside, he led the trembling child upstairs. "Don't be afraid, just be quiet. Everything is all right, don't be frightened." When they had arrived in Heidi's room, the doctor put the little girl to bed, covering her up carefully. Drawing a chair near the couch, he waited till Heidi had calmed down and had stopped trembling. Then taking her hand in his, he said kindly, "Now everything is all right again. Tell me where you wanted to go." "I did not want to go anywhere," Heidi assured him. "I did not go myself, only I was there all of a sudden." "Really? Tell me, what did you dream?" "Oh, I have the same dream every night. I always think I am with my grandfather again and can hear the fir trees roar. I always think how beautiful the stars must be, and then I open the door of the hut, and oh, It is so wonderful. But when I wake up, I am always in Frankfurt. Heidi had to fight the sobs that were rising in her throat. Does your back or your head hurt you, child? No, but I feel as if a big stone was pressing me here. As if you had eaten something that disagreed with you. Oh no, but as if I wanted to cry hard. So, and then you cry out, don't you? Oh no, I must never do that, for Miss Rottenmeier has forbidden it. Then you swallow it down. Yes, do you like to be here? Oh yes, was the faint, uncertain reply. Where did you live with your grandfather? Up on the Alp. But wasn't it a little lonely there? Oh no, it was so beautiful. But Heidi could say no more. The recollection, the excitement of the night, and all the restrained sorrow overpowered the child. The tears rushed violently from her eyes, and she broke out into loud sobs. The doctor rose and, soothing her, said, "It won't hurt to cry. You'll go to sleep afterward, and when you wake up, everything will come right." Then he left the room. Joining his anxious friend downstairs, he said, "Sesame, the little girl is a sleepwalker and has unconsciously scared your whole household. Besides, she is so homesick that her little body has wasted away. We shall have to act quickly. The only remedy for her is to be restored to her native mountain air. This is my prescription, and she must go tomorrow." What, sick, a sleepwalker, and wasted away in my house? Nobody even suspected it. You think I should send this child back in this condition, when she has come in good health? No, doctor, ask everything but that. Take her in hand and prescribe for her, but let her get well before I send her back. Sesame, the doctor replied seriously, just think what you are doing. We cannot cure her with powders and pills. The child has not a strong constitution, and if you keep her here, she might never get well again. If you restore her to the bracing mountain air to which she is accustomed, she probably will get perfectly well again. When Mr. Sesame heard this, he said, "If that is your advice, we must act at once. This is the only way then." With these words, Mr. Sesame took his friend's arm and walked about with him to talk the matter over. When everything was settled, the doctor took his leave, for the morning had already come and the sun was shining in through the door. Chapter 13. Mr. Sesame, going upstairs in great agitation, knocked at the housekeeper's door. He asked her to hurry, for preparations for a journey had to be made. Miss Rottenmeier obeyed the summons with the greatest indignation, for it was only 4:30 in the morning. She dressed in haste, though with great difficulty, being nervous and excited. All the other servants were summoned likewise, and one and all thought that the master of the house had been seized by the ghost, and that he was ringing for help. When they had all come down with terrified looks, they were most surprised to see Mr. Sesame fresh and cheerful, giving orders. John was sent to get the horses ready, and Tinette was told to prepare Heidi for her departure, while Sebastian was commissioned to fetch Heidi's aunt. Mr. Sesame instructed the housekeeper to pack a trunk in all haste for Heidi. Miss Rottenmeier experienced an extreme disappointment, for she had hoped for an explanation of the great mystery. But Mr. Sesame, evidently not in the mood to converse further, went to his daughter's room. Clara had been wakened by the unusual noises and was listening eagerly. Her father told her of what had happened and how the doctor had ordered Heidi back to her home because her condition was serious and might get worse. She might even climb the roof or be exposed to similar dangers if she was not cured at once. Clara was painfully surprised and tried to prevent her father from carrying out his plan. He remained firm, however, promising to take her to Switzerland himself the following summer if she was good and sensible now. So the child, resigning herself, begged to have Heidi's trunk packed in her room. Mr. Sesame encouraged her to get together a good outfit for her little friend. Heidi's aunt had arrived in the meantime. Being told to take her niece home with her, she found no end of excuses, which plainly showed that she did not want to do it, for Detail well remembered the uncle's parting words. Mr. Sesame dismissed her and summoned Sebastian. The butler was told to get ready for traveling with the child. He was to go to ball that day, and spend the night at a good hotel which his master named. The next day the child was to be brought to her home. "Listen, Sebastian," Mr. Sesame said, "and do exactly as I tell you. I know the hotel in Ball, and if you show my card they will give you good accommodations. Go to the child's room and barricade the windows so that they can only be opened by the greatest force. When Heidi has gone to bed, lock the door from outside, for the child walks in her sleep and might come to harm in the strange hotel. She might get up and open the door. Do you understand?" Oh, so it was she," exclaimed the butler. "Yes, it was. You are a coward, and you can tell John he is the same. Such foolish men to be afraid." With that, Mr. Sesame went to his room to write a letter to Heidi's grandfather. Sebastian, feeling ashamed, said to himself that he ought to have resisted John and found out alone. Heidi was dressed in her Sunday frock and stood waiting for further commands. Mr. Sesame called her now. "Good morning, Mr. Sesame," Heidi said when she entered. "What do you think about it, little one?" he asked her. Heidi looked up to him in amazement. "You don't seem to know anything about it," laughed Mr. Sesame. Tynette had not even told the child, for she thought it beneath her dignity to speak to the vulgar Heidi. "You are going home today." "Home," Heidi repeated in a low voice. She had to gasp, so great was her surprise. "Wouldn't you like to hear something about it?" asked Mr. Sesame, smiling. "Oh yes, I should like to," said the blushing child. "Good, good," said the kind gentleman. "Sit down and eat a big breakfast now, for you are going away right afterwards." The child could not even swallow a morsel, though she tried to eat out of obedience. It seemed to her as if it was only a dream. "Go to Clara, Heidi, till the carriage comes," Mr. Sesame said kindly. Heidi had been wishing to go, and now she ran to Clara's room, where a huge trunk was standing. "Heidi, look at the things I had packed for you. Do you like them?" Clara asked. There were a great many lovely things in it, but Heidi jumped for joy when she discovered a little basket with 12 round white rolls for the grandmother. The children had forgotten that the moment for parting had come, when the carriage was announced. Heidi had to get all her own treasures from her room yet. The grandmamma's book was carefully packed, and the red shawl that Miss Rottenmeier had purposely left behind. Then, putting on her pretty hat, she left her room to say goodbye to Clara. There was not much time left to do so, for Mr. Sesame was waiting to put Heidi in the carriage. When Miss Rottenmeier, who was standing on the stairs to bid farewell to her pupil, saw the red bundle in Heidi's hand, she seized it and threw it on the ground. Heidi looked imploringly at her kind protector, and Mr. Sesame, seeing how much she treasured it, gave it back to her. The happy child at parting thanked him for all his goodness. She also sent a message of thanks to the good old doctor, whom she suspected to be the real cause of her going. While Heidi was being lifted into the carriage, Mr. Sesame assured her that Clara and he would never forget her. Sebastian followed with Heidi's basket and a large bag with provisions. Mr. Sesame called out, "Happy journey!" and the carriage rolled away. Only when Heidi was sitting in the train did she become conscious of where she was going. She knew now that she would really see her grandfather and the grandmother again, also Peter and the goats. Her only fear was that the poor blind grandmother might have died while she was away. The thing she looked forward to most was giving the soft, white rolls to the grandmother. While she was musing over all these things, she fell asleep. In Ball, she was roused by Sebastian, for there they were to spend the night. The next morning they started off again, and it took them many hours before they reached Mayenfeld. When Sebastian stood on the platform of the station, he wished he could have traveled further in the train rather than have to climb a mountain. The last part of the trip might be dangerous, for everything seemed half wild in this country. Looking round, he discovered a small wagon with a lean horse. A broad-shouldered man was just loading up large bags, which had come by the train. Sebastian, approaching the man, asked some information concerning the least dangerous ascent to the Alp. After a while, it was settled that the man should take Heidi and her trunk to the village, and see to it that somebody would go up with her from there. Not a word had escaped Heidi until she now said, "I can go up alone from the village. I know the road." Sebastian felt relieved, and calling Heidi to him, presented her with a heavy roll of bills and a letter for the grandfather. These precious things were put at the bottom of the basket, under the rolls, so that they could not possibly get lost. Heidi promised to be careful of them, and was lifted up to the cart. The two old friends shook hands and parted, and Sebastian, with a slightly bad conscience for having deserted the child so soon, sat down on the station to wait for a returning train. The driver was no other than the village baker, who had never seen Heidi but had heard a great deal about her. He had known her parents and immediately guessed she was the child who had lived with the uncle. Curious to know why she came home again, he began a conversation. "Are you Heidi, the child who lived with the uncle?" "Yes." "Why are you coming home again? Did you get on badly?" "Oh, no. Nobody could have got on better than I did in Frankfurt." "Then why are you coming back?" "Because Mr. Sesame let me come." "Pooh, why didn't you stay?" "Because I would rather be with my grandfather on the Alp than anywhere on earth." "You may think differently when you get there," muttered the baker. "It is strange, though, for she must know," he said to himself. They conversed no more, and Heidi began to tremble with excitement when she recognized all the trees on the road and the lofty peaks of the mountains. Sometimes she felt as if she could not sit still any longer, but had to jump down and run with all her might. They arrived at the village at the stroke of 5. Immediately, a large group of women and children surrounded the cart, for the trunk and the little passenger had attracted everybody's notice. When Heidi had been lifted down, she found herself held and questioned on all sides. But when they saw how frightened she was, they let her go at last. The baker had to tell of Heidi's arrival with the strange gentleman, and assured all the people that Heidi loved her grandfather with all her heart. Let the people say what they would about him. Heidi, in the meantime, was running up the path. From time to time she was obliged to stop, for her basket was heavy and she lost her breath. Her one idea was, if only grandmother still sits in her corner by her spinning wheel. Oh, if she should have died. When the child caught sight of the hut at last, her heart began to beat. The quicker she ran, the more it beat, but at last she tremblingly opened the door. She ran into the middle of the room, unable to utter one tone, she was so out of breath. "Oh, God," it sounded from one corner. "Our Heidi used to come in like that. Oh, if I just could have her again with me before I die. Who has come?" "Here I am, grandmother, here I am," shouted the child, throwing herself on her knees before the old woman. She seized her hands and arms and, snuggling up to her, did not for joy utter one more word. The grandmother had been so surprised that she could only silently caress the child's curly hair over and over again. "Yes, yes," she said at last. "This is Heidi's hair and her beloved voice. Oh, my God, I thank thee for this happiness." Out of her blind eyes big tears of joy fell down on Heidi's hand. "Is it really you, Heidi? Have you really come again?" "Yes, yes, grandmother," the child replied. "You must not cry, for I have come and will never leave you any more. Now you won't have to eat hard black bread any more for a little while. Look what I have brought you." Heidi put one roll, after another, into the grandmother's lap. "Ah, child, what a blessing you bring to me," the old woman cried. "But you are my greatest blessing yourself, Heidi." Then, caressing the child's hair and flushed cheeks, she entreated, "Just say one more word, that I may hear your voice." While Heidi was talking, Peter's mother arrived and exclaimed in her amazement, "Surely this is Heidi, but how can that be?" The child rose to shake hands with Brigida, who could not get over Heidi's splendid frock and hat. "You can have my hat. I don't want it any more. I have my old one still," Heidi said, pulling out her old crushed straw hat. Heidi had remembered her grandfather's words to Dita about her feather hat. That was why she had kept her old hat so carefully. Brigida at last accepted the gift after a great many remonstrances. Suddenly Heidi took off her pretty dress and tied her old shawl about her. Taking the grandmother's hand, she said, Goodbye, I must go home to grandfather now, but I shall come again tomorrow. Good night, grandmother. Oh, please come again tomorrow, Heidi, implored the old woman, while she held her fast. Why did you take your pretty dress off? Asked Brigida. I'd rather go to grandfather that way, or else he might not know me any more, the way you did. Brigida accompanied the child outside and said mysteriously, He would have known you in your frock. You ought to have kept it on. Please be careful, child, for Peter tells us that the uncle never says a word to anyone and always seems so angry. But Heidi was unconcerned, and saying good night, climbed up the path with the basket on her arm. The evening sun was shining down on the grass before her. Every few minutes Heidi stood still to look at the mountains behind her. Suddenly she looked back and beheld such glory as she had not even seen in her most vivid dream. The rocky peaks were flaming in the brilliant light, the snowfields glowed and rosy clouds were floating overhead. The grass was like an expanse of gold, and below her the valley swam in golden mist. The child stood still, and in her joy and transport tears ran down her cheeks. She folded her hands, and looking up to heaven, thanked the Lord that he had brought her home again. She thanked him for restoring her to her beloved mountains. In her happiness, she could hardly find words to pray. Only when the glow had subsided was Heidi able to follow the path again. She climbed so fast that she could soon discover first the treetops, then the roof, finally the hut. Now she could see her grandfather sitting on his bench, smoking a pipe. Above the cottage, the fir trees gently swayed and rustled in the evening breeze. At last she had reached the hut, and throwing herself in her grandfather's arms, she hugged him and held him tight. She could say nothing but grandfather, 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 in her agitation. The old man said nothing either, but his eyes were moist, and loosening Heidi's arms at last, he sat her on his knee. When he had looked at her a while, he said, So you have come home again, Heidi? Why, you certainly do not look very citified. Did they send you away? Oh no, you must not think that, grandfather. They all were so good to me, Clara, Mr. Sesame, and grandmamma. But grandfather, sometimes I felt as if I could not bear it any longer to be away from you. I thought I should choke. I could not tell anyone, for that would have been ungrateful. Suddenly, one morning Mr. Sesame called me very early. I think it was the doctor's fault, but I think it is probably written in this letter. With that, Heidi brought the letter and the bankroll from her basket, putting them on her grandfather's lap. This belongs to you, he said, laying the roll beside him. Having read the letter, he put it in his pocket. Do you think you can still drink milk with me, Heidi? He asked, while he stepped into the cottage. Take your money with you. You can buy a bed for it and clothes for many years. I don't need it at all, grandfather, Heidi assured him. I have a bed, and Clara has given me so many dresses that I shan't need any more all my life. Take it and put it in the cupboard, for you will need it some day. Heidi obeyed and danced around the hut in her delight to see all the beloved things again. Running up to the loft, she exclaimed in great disappointment, Oh, grandfather, my bed is gone. It will come again, the grandfather called up from below. How could I know that you were coming back? Get your milk now. Heidi, coming down, took her old seat. She seized her bowl and emptied it eagerly, as if it was the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted. Grandfather, our milk is the best in all the world. Suddenly Heidi, hearing a shrill whistle, rushed outside, as Peter and all his goats came racing down. Heidi greeted the boy, who stopped, rooted to the spot, staring at her. Then she ran into the midst of her beloved friends, who had not forgotten her either. Schwenli and Belly bleated for joy, and all her other favorites pressed near to her. Heidi was beside herself with joy, and caressed little Snowhopper and patted Thistlefinch, till she felt herself pushed to and fro among them. Peter, why don't you come down and say good night to me? Heidi called to the boy. Have you come again? He exclaimed at last. Then he took Heidi's proffered hand and asked her, as if she had been always there, Are you coming up with me tomorrow? No, tomorrow I must go to grandmother, but perhaps the day after. Peter had a hard time with his goats that day, for they would not follow him. Over and over again they came back to Heidi, till she entered the shed with Belly and Schwenli and shut the door. When Heidi went up to her loft to sleep, she found a fresh, fragrant bed waiting for her, and she slept better that night than she had for many, many months, for her great and burning longing had been satisfied. About 10 times that night the grandfather rose from his couch to listen to Heidi's quiet breathing. The window was filled up with hay, for from now on the moon was not allowed to shine on Heidi anymore. But Heidi slept quietly, for she had seen the flaming mountains and had heard the fir trees roar. Chapter 14. Heidi was standing under the swaying fir trees, waiting for her grandfather to join her. He had promised to bring up her trunk from the village while she went in to visit the grandmother. The child was longing to see the blind woman again and to hear how she had liked the rolls. It was Saturday, and the grandfather had been cleaning the cottage. Soon he was ready to start. When they had descended and Heidi entered Peter's hut, the grandmother called lovingly to her, "Have you come again, child?" She took hold of Heidi's hand and held it tight. Grandmother then told the little visitor how good the rolls had tasted and how much stronger she felt already. Brigida related further that the grandmother had only eaten a single roll, being so afraid to finish them too soon. Heidi had listened attentively and said now, "Grandmother, I know what I shall do. I'm going to write to Clara and she'll surely send me a whole lot more." But Brigida remarked, "That is meant well, but they get hard so soon. If I only had a few extra pennies, I could buy some from our baker. He makes them too, but I am hardly able to pay for the black bread." Heidi's face suddenly shone. "Oh, grandmother, I have an awful lot of money," she cried. "Now I know what I'll do with it. Every day you must have a fresh roll and 2 on Sundays. Peter can bring them up from the village." "No, no, child," the grandmother implored. "That must not be. You must give it to grandfather and he'll tell you what to do with it." But Heidi did not listen but jumped gaily about the little room, calling over and over again, "Now grandmother can have a roll every day. She'll get well and strong, and," she called with fresh delight, "maybe your eyes will see again, too, when you are strong and well." The grandmother remained silent, not to mar the happiness of the child. Seeing the old hymn book on the shelf, Heidi said, "Grandmother, shall I read you a song from your book now? I can read quite nicely," she added after a pause. "Oh yes, I wish you would, child. Can you really read?" Heidi, climbing on a chair, took down the dusty book from a shelf. After she had carefully wiped it off, she sat down on a stool. "What shall I read, grandmother?" "Whatever you want to," was the reply. Turning the pages, Heidi found a song about the sun and decided to read that aloud. More and more eagerly she read, while the grandmother, with folded arms, sat in her chair. An expression of indescribable happiness shone in her countenance, though tears were rolling down her cheeks. When Heidi had repeated the end of the song a number of times, the old woman exclaimed, "Oh, Heidi, everything seems bright to me again and my heart is light." "Thank you, child, you have done me so much good." Heidi looked enraptured at the grandmother's face, which had changed from an old, sorrowful expression to a joyous one. She seemed to look up gratefully, as if she could already behold the lovely, celestial gardens told of in the hymn. Soon the grandfather knocked on the window, for it was time to go. Heidi followed quickly, assuring the grandmother that she would visit her every day now. On the days she went up to the pasture with Peter, she would return in the early afternoon, for she did not want to miss the chance to make the grandmother's heart joyful and light. Brigida urged Heidi to take her dress along, and with it on her arm, the child joined the old man and immediately told him what had happened. On hearing of her plan to purchase rolls for the grandmother every day, the grandfather reluctantly consented. At this, the child gave a bound, shouting, "Oh, grandfather, now grandmother won't ever have to eat hard, black bread anymore. Oh, everything is so wonderful now. If God our Father had done immediately what I prayed for, I should have come home at once and could not have brought half as many rolls to grandmother. I should not have been able to read either. Grandmama told me that God would make everything much better than I could ever dream. I shall always pray from now on, the way grandmama taught me. When God does not give me something I pray for, I shall always remember how everything has worked out for the best this time. We'll pray every day, grandfather, won't we? For otherwise God might forget us. And if somebody should forget to do it, murmured the old man. Oh, he'll get on badly, for God will forget him too. If he is unhappy and wretched, people don't pity him, for they will say, he went away from God, and now the Lord, who alone can help him, has no pity on him. Is that true, Heidi? Who told you so? Grandmama explained it all to me. After a pause, the grandfather said, yes, but if it has happened, then there is no help. Nobody can come back to the Lord when God has once forgotten him. But grandfather, everybody can come back to him. Grandmama told me that, and besides there is the beautiful story in my book. Oh, grandfather, you don't know it yet, and I shall read it to you as soon as we get home. The grandfather had brought a big basket with him, in which he carried half the contents of Heidi's trunk. It had been too large to be conveyed up the steep ascent. Arriving at the hut and setting down his load, he had to sit beside Heidi, who was ready to begin the tale. With great animation, Heidi read the story of the prodigal son, who was happy at home with his father's cows and sheep. The picture showed him leaning on his staff, watching the sunset. Suddenly he wanted to have his own inheritance and be able to be his own master. Demanding the money from his father, he went away and squandered all. When he had nothing in the world left, he had to go as servant to a peasant, who did not own fine cattle like his father, but only swine. His clothes were rags, and for food he only got the husks on which the pigs were fed. Often he would think what a good home he had left, and when he remembered how good his father had been to him and his own ungratefulness, he would cry from repentance and longing. Then he said to himself, I shall go to my father and ask his forgiveness. When he approached his former home, his father came out to meet him. What do you think will happen now? Heidi asked. You think that the father is angry and will say, did I tell you? But just listen. And his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck. And the son said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again, he was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Isn't it a beautiful story, grandfather? Asked Heidi, when he sat silently beside her. Yes, Heidi, it is, said the grandfather, but so seriously that Heidi quietly looked at the pictures. Look how happy he is, she said, pointing to it. A few hours later, when Heidi was sleeping soundly, the old man climbed up the ladder. Placing a little lamp beside the sleeping child, he watched her a long, long time. Her little hands were folded and her rosy face looked confident and peaceful. The old man now folded his hands and said in a low voice, while big tears rolled down his cheeks, Father, I have sinned against heaven and thee, and am no more worthy to be thy son. The next morning found the uncle standing before the door, looking about him over valley and mountain. A few early bells sounded from below, and the birds sang their morning anthems. Re-entering the house, he called, Heidi, get up, the sun is shining. Put on a pretty dress, for we are going to church. That was a new call, and Heidi obeyed quickly. When the child came downstairs in her smart little frock, she opened her eyes wide. Oh, grandfather, she exclaimed, I have never seen you in your Sunday coat with the silver buttons. Oh, how fine you look. The old man, turning to the child, said with a smile, You look nice, too. Come now. With Heidi's hand in his, they wandered down together. The nearer they came to the village, the louder and richer the bells resounded. Oh, grandfather, do you hear it? It seems like a big, high feast, said Heidi. When they entered the church, all the people were singing. Though they sat down on the last bench behind, the people had noticed their presence and whispered it from ear to ear. When the pastor began to preach, his words were a loud thanksgiving that moved all his hearers. After the service, the old man and the child walked to the parsonage. The clergyman had opened the door and received them with friendly words. "I have come to ask your forgiveness for my harsh words," said the uncle. "I want to follow your advice to spend the winter here among you. If the people look at me askance, I can't expect any better. I am sure, Mr. Pastor, you will not do so." The pastor's friendly eyes sparkled, and with many a kind word he commended the uncle for this change, and putting his hand on Heidi's curly hair, ushered them out. Thus the people, who had been all talking together about this great event, could see that their clergyman shook hands with the old man. The door of the parsonage was hardly shut when the whole assembly came forward with outstretched hands and friendly greetings. Great seemed to be their joy at the old man's resolution. Some of the people even accompanied him on his homeward way. When they had parted at last, the uncle looked after them with his face shining as with an inward light. Heidi looked up to him and said, "Grandfather, you have never looked so beautiful." "Do you think so, child?" he said with a smile. "You see, Heidi, I am more happy than I deserve. To be at peace with God and men makes one's heart feel light. God has been good to me to send you back." When they arrived at Peter's hut, the grandfather opened the door and entered. "How do you do, grandmother?" he called out. "I think we must start to mend again before the fall wind comes." "Oh, my God, the uncle!" exclaimed the grandmother in joyous surprise. "How happy I am to be able to thank you for what you have done, uncle. Thank you, God bless you for it." With trembling joy, the grandmother shook hands with her old friend. "There is something else I want to say to you, uncle," she continued. "If I have ever hurt you in any way, do not punish me. Do not let Heidi go away again before I die. I cannot tell you what Heidi means to me." So saying, she held the clinging child to her. "No danger of that, grandmother. I hope we shall all stay together now for many years to come." Brigida now showed Heidi's feather hat to the old man and asked him to take it back. But the uncle asked her to keep it, since Heidi had given it to her. "What blessings this child has brought from Frankfurt," Brigida said. "I often wondered if I should not send our little Peter too. What do you think, uncle?" The uncle's eyes sparkled with fun when he replied, "I am sure it would not hurt Peter. Nevertheless, I should wait for a fitting occasion before I sent him." The next moment Peter himself arrived in great haste. He had a letter for Heidi, which had been given to him in the village. What an event, a letter for Heidi. They all sat down at the table while the child read it aloud. The letter was from Clara Sesame, who wrote that everything had got so dull since Heidi left. She said that she could not stand it very long, and therefore her father had promised to take her to Raget's this coming fall. She announced that Grandmama was coming too, for she wanted to see Heidi and her grandfather. Grandmama, having heard about the rolls, was sending some coffee, too, so that the grandmother would not have to eat them dry. Grandmama also insisted on being taken to the grandmother herself when she came on her visit. Great was the delight caused by this news, and what with all the questions and plans that followed, the grandfather himself forgot how late it was. This happy day, which had united them all, caused the old woman to say at parting, "The most beautiful thing of all, though, is to be able to shake hands again with an old friend, as in days gone by. It is a great comfort to find again what we have treasured. I hope you'll come soon again, uncle. I am counting on the child for tomorrow." This promise was given. While Heidi and her grandfather were on their homeward path, the peaceful sound of evening bells accompanied them. At last they reached the cottage, which seemed to glow in the evening light. Chapter 15. The kind doctor who had sent Heidi home to her beloved mountains was approaching the Sesame residence on a sunny day in September. Everything about him was bright and cheerful, but the doctor did not even raise his eyes from the pavement to the blue sky above. His face was sad, and his hair had turned very gray since spring. A few months ago, the doctor had lost his only daughter, who had lived with him since his wife's early death. The blooming girl had been his only joy, and since she had gone from him, the ever-cheerful doctor was bowed down with grief. When Sebastian opened the door to the physician, he bowed very low, for the doctor made friends wherever he went. "I am glad you have come, doctor," Mr. Sesame called to his friend as he entered. "Please let us talk over this trip to Switzerland again. Do you still give the same advice, now that Clara is so much better?" "What must I think of you, Sesame?" replied the doctor, sitting down. "I wish your mother was here. Everything is clear to her and things go smoothly then. This is the third time today that you have called me, and always for the same thing." "It is true. It must make you impatient," said Mr. Sesame. Laying his hand on his friend's shoulder, he continued, "I cannot say how hard it is for me to refuse Clara this trip. Haven't I promised it to her, and hasn't she looked forward to it for months? She has borne all her suffering so patiently, just because she had hoped to be able to visit her little friend on the Alp. I hate to rob her of this pleasure. The poor child has so many trials and so little change." "But Sesame, you must do it," was the doctor's answer. When his friend remained silent, he continued, "Just think what a hard summer Clara has had. She never was more ill, and we could not attempt this journey without risking the worst consequences. Remember, we are in September now, and though the weather may still be fine on the Alp, it is sure to be very cool. The days are getting short, and she could only spend a few hours up there if she had to return for the night. It would take several hours to have her carried up from Ragetz. You see yourself how impossible it is. I shall come in with you, though, to talk to Clara, and you'll find her sensible. I'll tell you of my plan for next May. First, she can go to Ragetz to take the baths. When it gets warm on the mountain, she can be carried up from time to time. She'll be stronger then and much more able to enjoy those excursions than she is now. If we hope for an improvement in her condition, we must be extremely cautious and careful. Remember that." Mr. Sesame, who had been listening with the utmost submission, now said anxiously, "Doctor, please tell me honestly if you still have hope left for any change." With shrugging shoulders, the doctor replied, "Not very much. But think of me, Sesame. Have you not a child who loves you and always welcomes you? You don't have to come back to a lonely house and sit down alone at your table. Your child is well taken care of, and if she has many privations, she also has many advantages. Sesame, you do not need to be pitied. Just think of my lonely home." Mr. Sesame had gotten up and was walking round the room, as he always did when something occupied his thoughts. Suddenly he stood before his friend and said, "Doctor, I have an idea. I cannot see you sad any longer. You must get away. You shall undertake this trip and visit Heidi in our stead." The doctor had been surprised by this proposal and tried to object, but Mr. Sesame was so full of his new project that he pulled his friend with him into his daughter's room, not leaving him time for any remonstrances. Clara loved the doctor, who had always tried to cheer her up on his visits by bright and funny tales. She was sorry for the change that had come over him and would have given much to see him happy again. When he had shaken hands with her, both men pulled up their chairs to Clara's bedside. Mr. Sesame began to speak of their journey and how sorry he was to give it up. Then he quickly began to talk of his new plan. Clara's eyes had filled with tears, but she knew that her father did not like to see her cry, and besides she was sure that her papa would only forbid her this pleasure, because it was absolutely necessary to do so. So she bravely fought her tears, and caressing the doctor's hand, said, "Oh, please, doctor, do go to Heidi. Then you can tell me all about her, and can describe her grandfather to me, and Peter with his goats. I seem to know them all so well. Then you can take all the things to her that I had planned to take myself. Oh, please, doctor, go, and then I'll be good and take as much cod liver oil as ever you want me to." Who can tell if this promise decided the doctor? At any rate, he answered with a smile, "Then I surely must go, Clara, for you will get fat and strong, as we both want to see you. Have you settled yet when I must go?" "Oh, you had better go tomorrow morning, doctor," Clara urged. "She is right," the father assented. "The sun is shining, and you must not lose any more glorious days on the Alp." The doctor had to laugh. "Why don't you chide me for being here still? I shall go as quickly as I can, Sesame." Clara gave many messages to him for Heidi. She also told him to be sure to observe everything closely, so that he would be able to tell her all about it when he came back. The things for Heidi were to be sent to him later, for Miss Rottenmeier, who had to pack them, was out on one of her lengthy wanderings about town. The doctor promised to comply with all Clara's wishes and to start the following day. Clara rang for the maid and said to her, when she arrived, "Please, Tynette, pack a lot of fresh, soft coffee cake in this box." A box had been ready for this purpose many days. When the maid was leaving the room, she murmured, "That's a silly bother." Sebastian, who had happened to overhear some remarks, asked the physician when he was leaving to take his regards to the little miss, as he called Heidi. With a promise to deliver this message, the doctor was just hastening out when he encountered an obstacle. Miss Rottenmeier, who had been obliged to return from her walk on account of the strong wind, was just coming in. She wore a large cape, which the wind was blowing about her like two full sails. Both had retreated politely to give way to each other. Suddenly the wind seemed to carry the housekeeper straight towards the doctor, who had barely time to avoid her. This little incident, which had ruffled Miss Rottenmeier's temper very much, gave the doctor occasion to soothe her, as she liked to be soothed by this man, whom she respected more than anybody in the world. Telling her of his intended visit, he entreated her to pack the things for Heidi as only she knew how. Clara had expected some resistance from Miss Rottenmeier about the packing of her presents. What was her surprise when this lady showed herself most obliging, and immediately, on being told, brought together all the articles. First came a heavy coat for Heidi, with a hood, which Clara meant her to use on visits to the grandmother in the winter. Then came a thick, warm shawl and a large box with coffee cake for the grandmother. An enormous sausage for Peter's mother followed, and a little sack of tobacco for the grandfather. At last, a lot of mysterious little parcels and boxes were packed, things that Clara had gathered together for Heidi. When the tidy pack lay ready on the ground, Clara's heart filled with pleasure at the thought of her little friend's delight. Sebastian now entered, and putting the pack on his shoulder, carried it to the doctor's house without delay. Chapter 16. The early dawn was tinging the mountains, and a fresh morning breeze rocked the old fir trees to and fro. Heidi opened her eyes, for the rustling of the wind had awakened her. These sounds always thrilled her heart, and now they drew her out of bed. Rising hurriedly, she soon was neatly dressed and combed. Coming down the little ladder and finding the grandfather's bed empty, she ran outside. The old man was looking up at the sky to see what the weather was going to be like that day. Rosy clouds were passing overhead, but gradually the sky grew more blue and deep, and soon a golden light passed over the heights, for the sun was rising in all his glory. "Oh, how lovely! Good morning, grandfather," Heidi exclaimed. "Are your eyes bright already?" the grandfather retorted, holding out his hand. Heidi then ran over to her beloved fir trees and danced about, while the wind was howling in the branches. After the old man had washed and milked the goats, he brought them out of the shed. When Heidi saw her friends again, she caressed them tenderly, and they in their turn nearly crushed her between them. Sometimes when Belly got too wild, Heidi would say, "But Belly, you push me like the big Turk," and that was enough to quiet the goat. Soon Peter arrived with the whole herd, the jolly thistlefinch ahead of all the others. Heidi, being soon in the midst of them, was pushed about among them. Peter was anxious to say a word to the little girl, so he gave a shrill whistle, urging the goats to climb ahead. When he was near her, he said reproachfully, "You really might come with me today." "No, I can't, Peter," said Heidi. "They might come from Frankfurt any time. I must be home when they come." "How often you have said that," grumbled the boy. "But I mean it," replied Heidi. "Do you really think I want to be away when they come from Frankfurt? Do you really think that, Peter?" "They could come to Uncle," Peter growled. Then the grandfather's strong voice was heard. "Why doesn't the army go forward? Is it the field marshal's fault or the fault of the troop?" Peter immediately turned about, and led his goats up the mountain without more ado. Since Heidi had come home again to her grandfather, she did many things that had never occurred to her before. For instance, she would make her bed every morning and run about the hut, tidying and dusting. With an old rag, she would rub the chairs and table till they all shone, and the grandfather would exclaim, "It is always Sunday with us now. Heidi has not been away in vain." On this day after breakfast, when Heidi began her self-imposed task, it took her longer than usual, for the weather was too glorious to stay within. Over and over again, a bright sunbeam would tempt the busy child outside. How could she stay indoors when the glistening sunshine was pouring down and all the mountains seemed to glow? She had to sit down on the dry, hard ground and look down into the valley and all about her. Then, suddenly remembering her little duties, she would hasten back. It was not long, though, till the roaring fir trees tempted her again. The grandfather had been busy in his little shop, merely glancing over at the child from time to time. Suddenly he heard her call, "Oh, grandfather, come." He was frightened and came out quickly. He saw her running down the hill crying, "They are coming, they are coming. Oh, the doctor is coming first." When Heidi at last reached her old friend, he held out his hand, which Heidi immediately seized. In the full joy of her heart, she exclaimed, "How do you do, doctor? And I thank you 1,000 times." "How are you, Heidi? But what are you thanking me for already?" the doctor asked with a smile. "Because you let me come home again," the child explained. The gentleman's face lit up like sunshine. He had certainly not counted on such a reception on the Alp. On the contrary, not even noticing all the beauty around him, he had climbed up sadly, for he was sure that Heidi probably would not know him anymore. He thought that he would be far from welcome, being obliged to cause her a great disappointment. Instead, he beheld Heidi's bright eyes looking up at him in gratefulness and love. She was still holding his arm when he said, "Come now, Heidi, and take me to your grandfather, for I want to see where you live." Like a kind father, he had taken her hand, but Heidi stood still and looked down the mountainside. "But where are Clara and Grandmama?" she asked. "Child, I must tell you something now which will grieve you as much as it grieves me," replied the doctor. "I had to come alone, for Clara has been very ill and could not travel. Of course, Grandmama has not come either, but the spring will soon be here, and when the days get long and warm, they will surely visit you." Heidi was perfectly amazed. She could not understand how all those things that she had pictured to herself so clearly would not happen after all. She was standing perfectly motionless, confused by the blow. It was some time before Heidi remembered that, after all, she had come down to meet the doctor. Looking up at her friend, she was struck by his sad and cheerless face. How changed he was since she had seen him. She did not like to see people unhappy, least of all the good, kind doctor. He must be sad because Clara and Grandmama had not come, and to console him she said, "Oh, it won't last long till spring comes again. Then they will come for sure. They'll be able to stay much longer then, and that will please Clara. Now we'll go to Grandfather." Hand in hand, she climbed up with her old friend. All the way she tried to cheer him up by telling him again and again of the coming summer days. After they had reached the cottage, she called out to her grandfather quite happily, "They are not here yet, but it won't be very long before they are coming." The grandfather warmly welcomed his guest, who did not seem at all a stranger, for had not Heidi told him many things about the doctor? They all three sat down on the bench before the door, and the doctor told of the object of his visit. He whispered to the child that something was coming up the mountain very soon which would bring her more pleasure than his visit. What could it be? The uncle advised the doctor to spend the splendid days of autumn on the Alp, if possible, and to take a little room in the village instead of in Ragats. Then he could easily walk up every day to the hut, and from there the uncle could take him all around the mountains. This plan was accepted. The sun was in its zenith, and the wind had ceased. Only a soft, delicious breeze fanned the cheeks of all. The uncle now got up and went into the hut, returning soon with a table and their dinner. "Go in, Heidi, and set the table here. I hope you will excuse our simple meal," he said, turning to his guest. "I shall gladly accept this delightful invitation. I am sure that dinner will taste good up here," said the guest, looking down over the sun-bathed valley. Heidi was running to and fro, for it gave her great joy to be able to wait on her kind protector. Soon the uncle appeared with the steaming milk, the toasted cheese, and the finely sliced, rosy meat that had been dried in the pure air. The doctor enjoyed his dinner better than any he had ever tasted. "Yes, we must send Clara up here. How she could gather strength," he said. "If she would have an appetite like mine today, she couldn't help getting nice and fat." At this moment, a man could be seen walking up with a large sack on his shoulders. Arriving on top, he threw down his load, breathing in the pure, fresh air. Opening the cover, the doctor said, "This has come for you from Frankfurt, Heidi. Come and look what is in it." Heidi timidly watched the heap, and only when the gentleman opened the box with the cakes for the grandmother she said joyfully, "Oh, now grandmother can eat this lovely cake." She was taking the box and the beautiful shawl on her arm and was going to race down to deliver the gifts, when the men persuaded her to stay and unpack the rest. What was her delight at finding the tobacco and all the other things? The men had been talking together when the child suddenly planted herself in front of them and said, "These things have not given me as much pleasure as the dear doctor's coming." Both men smiled. When it was near sunset, the doctor rose to start on his way down. The grandfather, carrying the box, the shawl and the sausage, and the guest holding the little girl by the hand, they wandered down the mountainside. When they reached Peter's hut, Heidi was told to go inside and wait for her grandfather there. At parting, she asked, "Would you like to come with me up to the pasture tomorrow, doctor?" "With pleasure. Goodbye, Heidi," was the reply. The grandfather had deposited all the presents before the door, and it took Heidi long to carry in the huge box and the sausage. The shawl she put on the grandmother's knee. Brigida had silently watched the proceedings and could not open her eyes wide enough when she saw the enormous sausage. Never in her life had she seen the like, and now she really possessed it and could cut it herself. "Oh, grandmother, don't the cakes please you awfully? Just look how soft they are," the child exclaimed. What was her amazement when she saw the grandmother more pleased with the shawl, which would keep her warm in winter. "Grandmother, Clara has sent you that," Heidi said. "Oh, what kind good people they are to think of a poor old woman like me. I never thought I should ever own such a splendid wrap." At this moment, Peter came stumbling in. "The uncle is coming up behind me, and Heidi must." That was as far as he got, for his eyes had fastened on the sausage. Heidi, however, had already said goodbye, for she knew what he had meant. Though her uncle never went by the hut any more without stepping in, she knew it was too late today. "Heidi, come, you must get your sleep," he called through the open door. Bidding them all good night, he took Heidi by the hand, and under the glistening stars they wandered home to their peaceful cottage. Chapter 17. Early the next morning, the doctor climbed up the mountain in company with Peter and his goats. The friendly gentleman made several attempts to start a conversation with the boy, but as answer to his questions, he got nothing more than monosyllables. When they arrived on top, they found Heidi already waiting, fresh and rosy as the early dawn. "Are you coming?" asked Peter as usual. "Of course I shall, if the doctor comes with us," replied the child. The grandfather, coming out of the hut, greeted the newcomer with great respect. Then he went up to Peter and hung on his shoulder the sack, which seemed to contain more than usual that day. When they had started on their way, Heidi kept urging forward the goats, which were crowding about her. When at last she was walking peacefully by the doctor's side, she began to relate to him many things about the goats and all their strange pranks, and about the flowers, rocks, and birds they saw. When they arrived at their destination, time seemed to have flown. Peter all the time was sending many an angry glance at the unconscious doctor, who never even noticed it. Heidi now took the doctor to her favorite spot, From there they could hear the peaceful-sounding bells of the grazing cattle below. The sky was deep blue, and above their heads the eagle was circling with outstretched wings. Everything was luminous and bright about them, but the doctor had been silent. Suddenly looking up, he beheld Heidi's radiant eyes. "Heidi, it is beautiful up here," he said. "But how can anybody with a heavy heart enjoy the beauty? Tell me." "Oh," exclaimed Heidi, "one never has a sad heart here. One only gets unhappy in Frankfurt." A faint smile passed over the doctor's face. Then he began, "But if somebody has brought his sorrow away with him, how would you comfort him? God in heaven alone can help him." "That is true, child," remarked the doctor. "But what can we do when God himself has sent us the affliction?" After meditating a moment, Heidi replied, "One must wait patiently, for God knows how to turn the saddest things to something happy in the end. God will show us what he has meant to do for us, but he will only do so if we pray to him patiently." "I hope you will always keep this beautiful belief, Heidi," said the doctor. Then looking up at the mighty cliffs above, he continued, "Think how sad it would make us not to be able to see all these beautiful things. Wouldn't that make us doubly sad? Can you understand me, child?" A great pain shot through Heidi's breast. She had to think of the poor grandmother. Her blindness was always a great sorrow to the child, and she had been struck with it anew. Seriously, she replied, "Oh yes, I can understand it. But then we can read grandmother's songs. They make us happy and bright again." "Which songs, Heidi?" "Oh, those of the sun, and of the beautiful garden, and then the last verses of the long one. Grandmother loves them so that I always have to read them over 3 times," said Heidi. "I wish you would say them to me, child, for I should like to hear them," said the doctor. Heidi, folding her hands, began the consoling verses. She stopped suddenly, however, for the doctor did not seem to listen. He was sitting motionless, holding his hand before his eyes. Thinking that he had fallen asleep, she remained silent. But the verses had recalled his childhood days. He seemed to hear his mother and see her loving eyes, for when he was a little boy she had sung this song to him. A long time he sat there, till he discovered that Heidi was watching him. "Heidi, your song was lovely," he said with a more joyful voice. "We must come here another day, and then you can recite it to me again." During all this time, Peter had been boiling with anger. Now that Heidi had come again to the pasture with him, she did nothing but talk to the old gentleman. It made him very cross that he was not even able to get near her. Standing a little distance behind Heidi's friend, he shook his fist at him, and soon afterwards both fists, finally raising them up to the sky, as Heidi and the doctor remained together. When the sun stood in its zenith and Peter knew that it was noon, he called over to them with all his might, "Time to eat." When Heidi was getting up to fetch their dinner, the doctor just asked for a glass of milk, which was all he wanted. The child also decided to make the milk her sole repast, running over to Peter and informing him of their resolution. When the boy found that the whole contents of the bag was his, he hurried with his task as never in his life before. But he felt guilty on account of his former anger at the kind gentleman. To show his repentance, he held his hands up flat to the sky, indicating by his action that his fists did not mean anything anymore. Only after that did he start with his feast. Heidi and the doctor had wandered about the pasture till the gentleman had found it time to go. He wanted Heidi to remain where she was, but she insisted on accompanying him. All the way down she showed him many places where the pretty mountain flowers grew, all of whose names she could tell him. When they parted at last, Heidi waved to him. From time to time he turned about, and seeing the child still standing there, he had to think of his own little daughter who used to wave to him like that when he went away from home. The weather was warm and sunny that month. Every morning the doctor came up to the Alp, spending his day very often with the old man. Many a climb they had together that took them far up, to the bare cliffs near the eagle's haunt. The uncle would show his guest all the herbs that grew on hidden places and were strengthening and healing. He could tell many strange things of the beasts that lived in holes in rock or earth, or in the high tops of trees. In the evening they would part, and the doctor would exclaim, "My dear friend, I never leave you without having learned something." But most of his days he spent with Heidi. Then the two would sit together on the child's favorite spot, and Peter, quite subdued, behind them. Heidi had to recite the verses, as she had done the first day, and entertain him with all the things she knew. At last the beautiful month of September was over. One morning the doctor came up with a sadder face than usual. The time had come for him to go back to Frankfurt, and great was the uncle's sadness at that news. Heidi herself could hardly realize that her loving friend, whom she had been seeing every day, was really leaving. The doctor himself was loath to go, for the Alp had become as a home to him. But it was necessary for him to go, and shaking hands with the grandfather, he said goodbye, Heidi going along with him a little way. Hand in hand they wandered down, till the doctor stood still. Then caressing Heidi's curly hair, he said, "Now I must go, Heidi. I wish I could take you along with me to Frankfurt, then I could keep you." At those words, all the rows and rows of houses and streets, Miss Rottenmeier and Tinette rose before Heidi's eyes. Hesitating a little, she said, "I should like it better if you would come to see us again." "I believe that will be better. Now farewell," said the friendly gentleman. When they shook hands, his eyes filled with tears. Turning quickly, he hurried off. Heidi, standing on the same spot, looked after him. What kind eyes he had! But they had been full of tears. All of a sudden she began to cry bitterly and ran after her friend, calling with all her might, but interrupted by her sobs. "Oh, doctor, doctor." Looking round, he stood still and waited till the child had reached him. Her tears came rolling down her cheeks while she sobbed. "I'll come with you to Frankfurt, and I'll stay as long as ever you want me to. But first I must see grandfather." "No, no, dear child," he said affectionately. "Not at once. You must remain here. I don't want you to get ill again. But if I should get sick and lonely and ask you to come to me, would you come and stay with me? Can I go away and think that somebody in this world still cares for me and loves me?" "Yes, I shall come to you the same day, for I really love you as much as grandfather," Heidi assured him, crying all the time. Shaking hands again, they parted. Heidi stayed on the same spot, waving her hand and looking after her departing friend till he seemed no bigger than a little dot. Then he looked back a last time at Heidi and the sunny Alp, muttering to himself, "It is beautiful up there. Body and soul get strengthened in that place, and life seems worth living again." Chapter 18. The snow lay so deep around the hut that the windows seemed to stand level with the ground, and the house door had entirely disappeared. Round Peter's hut it was the same. When the boy went out to shovel the snow, he had to creep through the window. Then he would sink deep into the soft snow and kick with arms and legs to get free. Taking a broom, the boy would have to clear away the snow from the door to prevent its falling into the hut. The uncle had kept his word. When the first snow had fallen, he had moved down to the village with Heidi and his goats. Near the church and the parish house lay an old ruin that once had been a spacious building. A brave soldier had lived there in days gone by. He had fought in the Spanish War, and coming back with many riches, had built himself a splendid house. But having lived too long in the noisy world to be able to stand the monotonous life in the little town, he soon went away, never to come back. After his death, many years later, though the house was already beginning to decay, a distant relation of his took possession of it. The new proprietor did not want to build it up again, so poor people moved in. They had to pay little rent for the house, which was gradually crumbling and falling to pieces. Years ago, when the uncle had come to the village with Tobias, he had lived there. Most of the time it had been empty, for the winter lasted long, and cold winds would blow through the chinks in the walls. When poor people lived there, Their candles would be blown out and they would shiver with cold in the dark. But the uncle had known how to help himself. In the fall, as soon as he had resolved to live in the village, he came down frequently, fitting up the place as best he could. On approaching the house from the back, one entered an open room, where nearly all the walls lay in ruins. On one side, the remains of a chapel could be seen, now covered with the thickest ivy. A large hall came next, with a beautiful stone floor and grass growing in the crevices. Most of the walls were gone, and part of the ceiling also. If a few thick pillars had not been left supporting the rest, it would undoubtedly have tumbled down. The uncle had made a wooden partition here for the goats, and covered the floor with straw. Several corridors, most of them half decayed, led finally to a chamber with a heavy iron door. This room was still in good condition and had dark wood paneling on the four firm walls. In one corner was an enormous stove, which nearly reached up to the ceiling. On the white tiles were painted blue pictures of old towers surrounded by high trees and of hunters with their hounds. There also was a scene with a quiet lake, where under shady oak trees a fisherman was sitting. Around the stove a bench was placed. Heidi loved to sit there, and as soon as she had entered their new abode, she began to examine the pictures. Arriving at the end of the bench, she discovered a bed, which was placed between the wall and the stove. "Oh, grandfather, I have found my bedroom," exclaimed the little girl. "Oh, how fine it is! Where are you going to sleep?" "Your bed must be near the stove to keep you warm," said the old man. "Now come and look at mine." With that, the grandfather led her into his bedroom. From there, a door led into the hugest kitchen Heidi had ever seen. With a great deal of trouble, the grandfather had fitted up this place. Many boards were nailed across the walls, and the door had been fastened with heavy wires, for beyond, the building lay in ruins. Thick underbrush was growing there, sheltering thousands of insects and lizards. Heidi was delighted with her new home, and when Peter arrived next day, she did not rest till he had seen every nook and corner of the curious dwelling place. Heidi slept very well in her chimney corner, but it took her many days to get accustomed to it. When she woke up in the morning and could not hear the fir trees roar, she would wonder where she was. Was the snow too heavy on the branches? Was she away from home? But as soon as she heard her grandfather's voice outside, she remembered everything and would jump merrily out of bed. After 4 days had gone by, Heidi said to her grandfather, "I must go to grandmother now. She has been alone so many days." But the grandfather shook his head and said, "You can't go yet, child. The snow is fathoms deep up there and is still falling. Peter can hardly get through. A little girl like you would be snowed up and lost in no time. Wait a while till it freezes, and then you can walk on top of the crust." Heidi was very sorry, but she was so busy now that the days flew by. Every morning and afternoon she went to school, eagerly learning whatever was taught her. She hardly ever saw Peter there, for he did not come very often. The mild teacher would only say from time to time, "It seems to me Peter is not here again. School would do him good, but I guess there is too much snow for him to get through." But when Heidi came home towards evening, Peter generally paid her a visit. After a few days, the sun came out for a short time at noon, and the next morning the whole Alp glistened and shone like crystal. When Peter was jumping as usual into the snow that morning, he fell against something hard, and before he could stop himself, he flew a little way down the mountain. When he had gained his feet at last, he stamped upon the ground with all his might. It really was frozen as hard as stone. Peter could hardly believe it, and quickly running up and swallowing his milk and putting his bread in his pocket, he announced, I must go to school today. Yes, go and learn nicely, answered his mother. Then, sitting down on his sled, the boy coasted down the mountain like a shot. Not being able to stop his course when he reached the village, he coasted down further and further, till he arrived in the plain, where the sled stopped of itself. It was already late for school, so the boy took his time and only arrived in the village when Heidi came home for dinner. "We've got it," announced the boy on entering. "What general?" asked the uncle. "The snow," Peter replied. "Oh, now I can go up to grandmother," Heidi rejoiced. "But Peter, why didn't you come to school? You could coast down today," she continued reproachfully. "I went too far on my sled, and then it was too late," Peter replied. "I call that deserting," said the uncle. "People who do that must have their ears pulled. Do you hear?" The boy was frightened, for there was no one in the world whom he respected more than the uncle. "A general like you ought to be doubly ashamed to do so," the uncle went on. "What would you do with the goats if they did not obey you any more?" "Beat them," was the reply. "If you knew of a boy that was behaving like a disobedient goat and had to get spanked, what would you say?" "Serves him right." "So now you know it, Goat General. If you miss school again when you ought to be there, you can come to me and get your due." Now at last Peter understood what the uncle had meant. More kindly, the old man then turned to Peter and said, "Come to the table now and eat with us. Then you can go up with Heidi, and when you bring her back at night, you can get your supper here." This unexpected change delighted Peter. Not losing any time, he soon disposed of his full plate. Heidi, who had given the boy most of her dinner, was already putting on Clara's new coat. Then together they climbed up, Heidi chatting all the time. But Peter did not say a single word. He was preoccupied and had not even listened to Heidi's tales. Before they entered the hut, the boy said stubbornly, "I think I had rather go to school than get a beating from the uncle." Heidi promptly confirmed him in his resolution. When they went into the room, Peter's mother was alone at the table mending. The grandmother was nowhere to be seen. Brigida now told Heidi that the grandmother was obliged to stay in bed on those cold days, as she did not feel very strong. That was something new for Heidi. Quickly running to the old woman's chamber, she found her lying in a narrow bed, wrapped up in her gray shawl and thin blanket. "Thank heaven!" the grandmother exclaimed when she heard her darling's step. All autumn and winter long a secret fear had been gnawing at her heart, that Heidi would be sent for by the strange gentleman of whom Peter had told her so much. Heidi had approached the bed, asking anxiously, "Are you very sick, grandmother?" "No, no, child," the old woman reassured her. "The frost has just gone into my limbs a little." "Are you going to be well again as soon as the warm weather comes?" inquired Heidi. "Yes, yes, and if God wills, even sooner. I want to go back to my spinning wheel, and I nearly tried it today. I'll get up tomorrow, though," the grandmother said confidently, for she had noticed how frightened Heidi was. The last speech made the child feel more happy. Then, looking wonderingly at the grandmother, she said, "In Frankfurt people put on a shawl when they go out. Why are you putting it on in bed, grandmother?" "I put it on to keep me warm, Heidi. I am glad to have it, for my blanket is very thin." "But, grandmother, your bed is slanting down at your head, where it ought to be high. No bed ought to be like that." "I know, child, I can feel it well." So saying, the old woman tried to change her position on the pillow that lay under her like a thin board. My pillow never was very thick, and sleeping on it all these years has made it flat. Oh dear, if I had only asked Clara to give me the bed I had in Frankfurt, Heidi lamented. It had 3 big pillows on it. I could hardly sleep because I kept sliding down from them all the time. Could you sleep with them, grandmother? Of course, because that would keep me warm. I could breathe so much easier, too, said the grandmother, trying to find a higher place to lie on. But I must not talk about it anymore, for I have to be thankful for many things. I get the lovely roll every day and have this beautiful warm shawl. I also have you, my child. Heidi, wouldn't you like to read me something today? Heidi immediately fetched the book and read one song after another. The grandmother, in the meantime, was lying with folded hands. Her face, which had been so sad a short time ago, was lit up with a happy smile. Suddenly Heidi stopped. "Are you well again, grandmother?" she asked. "I feel very much better, Heidi. Please finish the song, will you?" The child obeyed, and when she came to the last words, "When mine eyes grow dim and sad, let thy love more brightly burn, that my soul, a wanderer glad, safely homeward may return." "Safely homeward may return," she exclaimed. "Oh, grandmother, I know what it is like to come home." After a while she said, "It is getting dark, grandmother. I must go home now. I am glad that you feel better again." The grandmother, holding the child's hand in hers, said, "Yes, I am happy again, though I have to stay in bed. Nobody knows how hard it is to lie here alone, day after day. I do not hear a word from anybody and cannot see a ray of sunlight. I have very sad thoughts sometimes, and often I feel as if I could not bear it any longer. But when I can hear those blessed songs that you have read to me, it makes me feel as if a light was shining into my heart, giving me the purest joy." Shaking hands, the child now said good night, and pulling Peter with her, ran outside. The brilliant moon was shining down on the white snow, light as day. The 2 children were already flying down the Alp, like birds soaring through the air. After Heidi had gone to bed that night, she lay awake a little while, thinking over everything the grandmother had said, especially about the joy the songs had given her. If only poor grandmother could hear those comforting words every day. Heidi knew that it might be a week or 2 again before she could repeat her visit. The child became very sad when she thought how uncomfortable and lonely the old woman would be. Was there no way for help? Suddenly Heidi had an idea, and it thrilled her so that she felt as if she could not wait till morning came to put her plan in execution. But in her excitement she had forgotten her evening prayer, so sitting up in bed, she prayed fervently to God. Then, falling back into the fragrant hay, she soon slept peacefully, and soundly still the bright morning came. Chapter 19. Peter arrived punctually at school next day. He had brought his lunch with him in a bag, for all the children that came from far away ate in school, while the others went home. In the evening, Peter, as usual, paid his visit to Heidi. The minute he opened the door, she ran up to him, saying, "Peter, I have to tell you something." "Say it," he replied. "You must learn to read now," said the child. "I have done it already." "Yes, yes, Peter, but I don't mean it that way," Heidi eagerly proceeded. "You must learn so that you really know how afterwards." "I can't," Peter remarked. "Nobody believes you about that anymore, and I won't either," Heidi said resolutely. "When I was in Frankfurt, Grandmama told me that it wasn't true and that I shouldn't believe you." Peter's astonishment was great. "I'll teach you, for I know how. When you have learnt it, you must read 1 or 2 songs to grandmother every day." "I shan't," grumbled the boy. This obstinate refusal made Heidi very angry. With flaming eyes, she planted herself before the boy and said, "I'll tell you what will happen if you don't want to learn. Your mother has often said that she'll send you to Frankfurt. Clara showed me the terrible, large boys' school there, where you'll have to go. You must stay there till you are a man, Peter. You mustn't think that there is only one teacher there, and such a kind one as we have here. No, indeed. There are whole rows of them, and when they are out walking they have high black hats on their heads. I saw them myself when I was out driving." Cold shivers ran down Peter's back. "Yes, you'll have to go there, and when they find out that you can't read or even spell, they'll laugh at you." "I'll do it," said Peter, half angry and half frightened. "Oh, I am glad. Let us start right away," said Heidi joyfully, pulling Peter over to the table. Among the things that Clara had sent, Heidi had found a little book with the ABC and some rhymes. She had chosen this for the lessons. Peter, having to spell the first rhyme, found great difficulty, so Heidi said, "I'll read it to you and then you'll be able to do it better. Listen. If A, B, C you do not know. Before the school board you must go." "I won't go," said Peter stubbornly. "Where?" "Before the court. Hurry up and learn the 3 letters, then you won't have to." Peter, beginning again, repeated the 3 letters till Heidi said, "Now you know them." Having observed the good result of the first rhyme, she began to read again. "D, E, F you then must read. Or of misfortune take good heed. If H, I, J, K are forgot, adversity is on the spot. Who over L and M doth stumble, must pay a penance and feel humble. There's trouble coming, if you knew, you'd quickly learn N, O, P, Q. If still you halt on R, S, T, you'll suffer for it speedily." Heidi, stopping, looked at Peter, who was so frightened by all these threats and mysterious horrors that he sat as still as a mouse. Heidi's tender heart was touched, and she said comfortingly, "Don't be afraid, Peter. If you come to me every day, you'll soon learn all the letters and then those things won't happen. But come every day, even when it snows. Promise." Peter did so, and departed. Obeying Heidi's instructions, he came daily to her for his lesson. Sometimes the grandfather would sit in the room, smoking his pipe. Often the corners of his mouth would twitch as if he could hardly keep from laughing. He generally invited Peter to stay to supper afterwards, which liberally rewarded the boy for all his great exertions. Thus the days passed by. In all this time Peter had really made some progress, though the rhymes still gave him difficulty. When they had come to U, Heidi read, "Whoever mixes U and V will go where he won't want to be." And further, "If W you still ignore, look at the rod beside the door." Often Peter would growl and object to those measures, but nevertheless he kept on learning, and soon had but 3 letters left. The next few days the following rhymes, with their threats, made Peter more eager than ever. If you the letter X forget, for you know supper will be set. If you still hesitate with Y, for shame you'll run away and cry. When Heidi read the last, and he who makes his Z with blots must journey to the Hottentots, Peter sneered. Nobody even knows where they are. "I am sure grandfather does," Heidi retorted, jumping up. "Just wait 1 minute and I shall ask him. He is over with the parson." And with that she had opened the door. "Wait!" shrieked Peter in great alarm, for he saw himself already transported to those dreadful people. "What is the matter with you?" said Heidi, standing still. "Nothing, but stay here. I'll learn," he blubbered. But Heidi, wanting to know something about the Hottentots herself, could only be kept back by piteous screams from Peter. So at last they settled down again, and before it was time to go, Peter knew the last letter and had even begun to read syllables. From this day on he progressed more quickly. It was 3 weeks since Heidi had paid her last visit to the grandmother, for much snow had fallen since. One evening, Peter, coming home, said triumphantly, "I can do it." "What is it you can do, Peter?" asked his mother eagerly. "Read." "What, is it possible? Did you hear it, grandmother?" exclaimed Brigida. The grandmother also was curious to learn how this had happened. "I must read a song now. Heidi told me to," Peter continued. To the women's amazement, Peter began. After every verse his mother would exclaim, "Who would have ever thought it?" while the grandmother remained silent. One day later, when it happened that it was Peter's turn to read in school, the teacher said, "Peter, must I pass you by again as usual? Or do you want to try? I shall not say to read, but to stammer through a line." Peter began and read 3 lines without stopping. In dumb astonishment, the teacher, putting down his book, looked at the boy. "What miracle has happened to you?" he exclaimed. "For a long time I tried to teach you with all my patience, and you were not even able to grasp the letters, but now that I had given you up as hopeless, you have not only learnt how to spell, but even to read. How did this happen, Peter?" "It was Heidi," the boy replied. In great amazement, the teacher looked at the little girl. Then the kind man continued, "I have noticed a great change in you, Peter. You used to stay away from school, sometimes more than a week, and lately you have not even missed a day. Who has brought about this change?" "The uncle." Every evening now Peter, on his return home, read one song to his grandmother, but never more. To the frequent praises of Brigida, the old woman once replied, "I am glad he has learnt something, but nevertheless I am longing for the spring to come. Then Heidi can visit me, for when she reads, the verses sound so different. I cannot always follow Peter, and the songs don't thrill me the way they do when Heidi says them." And no wonder, for Peter would often leave out long and difficult words. What did 3 or 4 words matter? So it happened sometimes that there were hardly any nouns left in the hymns that Peter read. Chapter 20. May had come. Warm sunshine was bathing the whole Alp in glorious light, and having melted the last snow, had brought the first spring flowers to the surface. A merry spring wind was blowing, drying up the damp places in the shadow. High above in the azure heaven the eagle floated peacefully. Heidi and her grandfather were back on the Alp. The child was so happy to be home again that she jumped about among the beloved objects. Here she discovered a new spring bud, and there she watched the gay little gnats and beetles that were swarming in the sun. The grandfather was busy in his little shop, and a sound of hammering and sawing could be heard. Heidi had to go and see what the grandfather was making. There before the door stood a neat new chair, while the old man was busy making a second. "Oh, I know what they are for," said Heidi gaily. "You are making them for Clara and Grandmama. Oh, but we need a third. Or do you think that Miss Rottenmeier won't come, perhaps?" "I really don't know," said Grandfather, "but it is safer to have a chair for her if she should come." Heidi, thoughtfully looking at the backless chairs, remarked, "Grandfather, I don't think she would sit down on those." "Then we must invite her to sit down on the beautiful green lounge of grass," quietly answered the old man. While Heidi was still wondering what the grandfather had meant, Peter arrived, whistling and calling. As usual, Heidi was soon surrounded by the goats, who also seemed happy to be back on the Alp. Peter, angrily pushing the goats aside, marched up to Heidi, thrusting a letter into her hand. "Did you get a letter for me on the pasture?" Heidi said, astonished. "No." "Where did it come from?" "From my bag." The letter had been given to Peter the previous evening. Putting it in his lunch bag, the boy had forgotten it there till he opened the bag for his dinner. Heidi immediately recognized Clara's handwriting and, bounding over to her grandfather, exclaimed, "A letter has come from Clara. Wouldn't you like me to read it to you, grandfather?" Heidi immediately read to her 2 listeners, as follows. "Dear Heidi, we are all packed up and shall travel in 2 or 3 days. Papa is leaving too, but not with us, for he has to go to Paris first. The dear doctor visits us now every day, and as soon as he opens the door, he calls, "Away to the Alp!" For he can hardly wait for us to go. If you only knew how he enjoyed being with you last fall. He came nearly every day this winter to tell us all about you and the grandfather and the mountains and the flowers he saw. He said that it was so quiet in the pure, delicious air, away from towns and streets, that everybody has to get well there. He is much better himself since his visit and seems younger and happier. Oh, how I look forward to it all. The doctor's advice is that I shall go to Raget's first for about 6 weeks. Then I can go to live in the village, and from there I shall come to see you every fine day. Grandmama, who is coming with me, is looking forward to the trip too. But just think, Miss Rottenmeier does not want to go. When Grandmama urges her, she always declines politely. I think Sebastian must have given her such a terrible description of the high rocks and fearful abysses that she is afraid. I think he told her that it was not safe for anybody, and that only goats could climb such dreadful heights. She used to be so eager to go to Switzerland, but now neither Tynette nor she wants to take the risk. I can hardly wait to see you again. Goodbye, dear Heidi, with much love from Grandmama. I am your true friend. Clara. When Peter heard this, he swung his rod to right and left. Furiously driving the goats before him, he bounded down the hill. Heidi visited the grandmother next day, for she had to tell her the good news. Sitting up in her corner, the old woman was spinning as usual. Her face looked sad, for Peter had already announced the near visit of Heidi's friends, and she dreaded the result. After having poured out her full heart, Heidi looked at the old woman. "What is it, grandmother?" said the child. "Are you not glad?" "Oh yes, Heidi, I am glad because you are happy." "But, grandmother, you seem so anxious. Do you still think Miss Rottenmeier is coming?" "Oh no, it is nothing. Give me your hand, for I want to be sure that you are still here. I suppose it will be for the best, even if I shall not live to see the day." "Oh, but then I would not care about this coming," said the child. The grandmother had hardly slept all night for thinking of Clara's coming. Would they take Heidi away from her, now that she was well and strong? But for the sake of the child, she resolved to be brave. "Heidi," she said, "please read me the song that begins with 'God will see to it.'" Heidi immediately did as she was told. She knew nearly all the grandmother's favorite hymns by now, and always found them quickly. "That does me good, child," the old woman said. Already the expression of her face seemed happier and less troubled. "Please read it a few times over, child," she entreated. Thus evening came, and when Heidi wandered homewards, one twinkling star after another appeared in the sky. Heidi stood still every few minutes, looking up to the firmament in wonder. When she arrived home, her grandfather also was looking up to the stars, murmuring to himself, "What a wonderful month! One day clearer than the other. The herbs will be fine and strong this year." The blossom month had passed, and June, with the long, long days, had come. Quantities of flowers were blooming everywhere, filling the air with perfume. The month was nearing its end, when one morning Heidi came running out of the hut, where she had already completed her duties. Suddenly she screamed so loud that the grandfather hurriedly came out to see what had happened. "Grandfather, come here, look." A strange procession was winding up the Alm. First marched 2 men, carrying an open sedan chair with a young girl in it, wrapped up in many shawls. Then came a stately lady on horseback, who, talking with a young guide beside her, looked eagerly right and left. Then an empty rolling chair, carried by a young fellow, was followed by a porter who had so many covers, shawls and furs piled up on his basket that they towered high above his head. They are coming," cried Heidi in her joy, and soon the party had arrived at the top. Great was the happiness of the children at seeing each other again. When Grandmama had descended from her horse, she tenderly greeted Heidi first, and then turned to the uncle, who had approached the group. The two met like 2 old friends. They had heard so much about each other. After the first words were exchanged, the grandmother exclaimed, "My dear uncle, what a wonderful residence you have! Who would have ever thought it? Kings could envy you here. Oh, how well my Heidi is looking, just like a little rose," she continued, drawing the child closely to her side and patting her cheeks. "What glory everywhere! Clara, what do you say to it all?" Clara, looking about her rapturously, cried, "Oh, how wonderful, how glorious! I have never dreamt it could be as beautiful as that. Oh, Grandmama, I wish I could stay here." The uncle had busied himself in the meantime with getting Clara's rolling chair for her. Then, going up to the girl, he gently lifted her into her seat. Putting some covers over her knees, he tucked her feet in warmly. It seemed as if the grandfather had done nothing else all his life than nurse lame people. "My dear uncle," said the grandmamma, surprised, "please tell me where you learned that, for I shall send all the nurses I know here immediately." The uncle smiled faintly, while he replied, "It comes more from care than study." His face became sad. Before his eyes had risen bygone times. For that was the way he used to care for his poor wounded captain, whom he had found in Sicily after a violent battle. He alone had been allowed to nurse him till his death, and now he would take just as good care of poor, lame Clara. When Clara had looked a long time at the cloudless sky above and all the rocky crags, she said longingly, "I wish I could walk round the hut to the fir trees. If I only could see all the things you told me so much about." Heidi pushed with all her might, and behold, the chair rolled easily over the dry grass. When they had come into the little grove, Clara could not see her fill of those splendid trees that must have stood there so many, many years. Although the people had changed and vanished, they had remained the same, ever looking down into the valley. When they passed the empty goat shed, Clara said pitifully, "Oh, Grandmamma, if I could only wait up here for Schwenli and Bally. I am afraid I shan't see Peter and his goats if we have to go away so soon again." "Dear child, enjoy now what you can," said the Grandmamma who had followed. "Oh, what wonderful flowers!" exclaimed Clara again. "Whole bushes of exquisite red blossoms. Oh, if I could only pick some of those bluebells." Heidi, immediately gathering a large bunch, put them in Clara's lap. "Clara, this is really nothing in comparison with the many flowers in the pasture. You must come up once and see them. There are so many that the ground seems golden with them. If you ever sit down among them, you will feel as if you could never get up any more. It is so beautiful." "Oh, Grandmamma, do you think I can ever go up there?" Clara asked with a wild longing in her eyes. "If I could only walk with you, Heidi, and climb round everywhere." "I'll push you," Heidi said for comfort. To show how easy it was, she pushed the chair at such a rate that it would have tumbled down the mountain if the grandfather had not stopped it at the last moment. It was time for dinner now. The table was spread near the bench, and soon everybody sat down. The grandmother was so overcome by the view and the delicious wind that fanned her cheek that she remarked, "What a wondrous place this is! I have never seen its like. But what do I see?" she continued. "I think you are actually eating your second piece of cheese, Clara." "Oh, Grandmamma, it tastes better than all the things we get in Ragats," replied the child, eagerly eating the savory dish. "Don't stop. Our mountain wind helps along where the cooking is faulty," contentedly said the old man. During the meal, the uncle and the grandmamma had soon got into a lively conversation. They seemed to agree on many things and understood each other like old friends. A little later, the grandmamma looked over to the west. "We must soon start, Clara, for the sun is already low. Our guides will be here shortly." Clara's face had become sad, and she entreated, "Oh, please let us stay here another hour or so. We haven't even seen the hut yet. I wish the day were twice as long." The grandmamma assented to Clara's wish to go inside. When the rolling chair was found too broad for the door, the uncle quietly lifted Clara in his strong arms and carried her in. Grandmamma was eagerly looking about her, glad to see everything so neat. Then going up the little ladder to the hayloft, she discovered Heidi's bed. "Is that your bed, Heidi? What a delicious perfume. It must be a healthy place to sleep," she said, looking out through the window. The grandfather, with Clara, was coming up too, with Heidi following. Clara was perfectly entranced. What a lovely place to sleep. Oh, Heidi, you can look right up to the sky from your bed. What a good smell. You can hear the fir trees roar here, can't you? Oh, I never saw a more delightful bedroom. The uncle, looking at the old lady, said now, I have an idea that it would give Clara new strength to stay up here with us a little while. Of course, I only mean if you did not object. You have brought so many wraps that we can easily make a soft bed for Clara here. My dear lady, you can easily leave the care to me. I'll undertake it gladly. The children screamed for joy, and Grandmamma's face was beaming. What a fine man you are, she burst out. I was just thinking myself that a stay here would strengthen the child, but then I thought of the care and trouble for you, and now you have offered to do it as if it was nothing at all. How can I thank you enough, uncle? After shaking hands many times, the two prepared Clara's bed, which, thanks to the old lady's precautions, was soon so soft that the hay could not be felt through at all. The uncle had carried his new patient back to her rolling chair, and there they found her sitting, with Heidi beside her. They were eagerly talking of their plans for the coming weeks. When they were told that Clara might stay for a month or so, their faces beamed more than ever. The guide, with the horse, and the carriers of the chair, now appeared, but the last two were not needed any more and could be sent away. When the grandmother got ready to leave, Clara called gaily to her, Oh, Grandmamma, it won't be long, for you must often come and see us. While the uncle was leading the horse down the steep incline, the grandmamma told him that she would go back to Ragatz, for the Durfey was too lonely for her. She also promised to come back from time to time. Before the grandfather had returned, Peter came racing down to the hut with all his goats. Seeing Heidi, they ran up to her in haste, and so Clara made the acquaintance of Schwenli and Belly and all the others. Peter, however, kept away, only sending furious looks at the two girls. When they bade him good night, he only ran away, beating the air with his stick. The end of the joyous day had come. The two children were both lying in their beds. Oh, Heidi, Clara exclaimed, I can see so many glittering stars, and I feel as if we were driving in a high carriage straight into the sky. Yes, and do you know why the stars twinkle so merrily? Inquired Heidi. No, but tell me. Because they know that God in heaven looks after us mortals, and we never need to fear. See, they twinkle and show us how to be merry, too. But Clara, we must not forget to pray to God and ask him to think of us and keep us safe. Sitting up in bed, they then said their evening prayer. As soon as Heidi lay down, she fell asleep. But Clara could not sleep quite yet. It was too wonderful to see the stars from her bed. In truth, she had never seen them before, because in Frankfurt all the blinds were always down long before the stars came out, and at night she had never been outside the house. She could hardly keep her eyes shut, and had to open them again and again to watch the twinkling, glistening stars, till her eyes closed at last, and she saw two big, glittering stars in her dream. Chapter 21. The sun was just rising, and the Amuncle was watching how mountain and dale awoke to the new day, and the clouds above grew brighter. Next, the old man turned to go back into the hut and softly climbed the ladder. Clara, having just a moment ago opened her eyes, looked about her in amazement. Bright sunbeams danced on her bed. Where was she? But soon she discovered her sleeping friend and heard the grandfather's cheery voice. How did you sleep? Not tired? Clara, feeling fresh and rested, said that she had never slept better in all her life. Heidi was soon awake, too, and lost no time in coming down to join Clara, who was already sitting in the sun. A cool morning breeze fanned their cheeks, and the spicy fragrance from the fir trees filled their lungs with every breath. Clara had never experienced such well-being in all her life. She had never breathed such pure, cool morning air, and never felt such warm, delicious sunshine on her feet and hands. It surpassed all her expectations. "Oh, Heidi, I wish I could always stay up here with you," she said. "Now you can see that everything is as beautiful as I told you," Heidi replied triumphantly. "Up on the Alp with grandfather is the loveliest spot in all the world." The grandfather was just coming out of the shed with 2 full bowls of steaming snow-white milk. Handing one to each of the children, he said to Clara, "This will do you good, little girl. It comes from Schwenli and will give you strength. To your health, just drink it," he said encouragingly, for Clara had hesitated a little. But when she saw that Heidi's bowl was nearly empty already, she also drank without even stopping. Oh, how good it was. It tasted like cinnamon and sugar. "We'll take 2 tomorrow," said the grandfather. After their breakfast, Peter arrived. While the goats were rushing up to Heidi, bleating loudly, the grandfather took the boy aside. "Just listen and do what I tell you," he said. "From now on you must let Schwenli go wherever she likes. She knows where to get the richest herbs and you must follow her, even if she should go higher up than usual. It won't do you any harm to climb a little more and will do all the others good. I want the goats to give me splendid milk, remember. What are you looking at so furiously?" Peter was silent and without more ado started off, still angrily looking back now and then. As Heidi had followed a little way, Peter called to her, "You must come along, Heidi. Schwenli has to be followed everywhere." "No, but I can't," Heidi called back. "I won't be able to come as long as Clara is with me. Grandfather has promised, though, to let us come up with you once." With those words, Heidi returned to Clara, while the goat herd was hurrying onward, angrily shaking his fists. The children had promised to write a letter to Grandmama every day, so they immediately started on their task. Heidi brought out her own little 3-legged stool, her school books and her papers, and with these on Clara's lap they began to write. Clara stopped after nearly every sentence, for she had to look around. Oh, how peaceful it was with the little gnats dancing in the sun and the rustling of the trees. From time to time, they could hear the shouting of a shepherd reach out from many rocks. The morning had passed, they knew not how, and dinner was ready. They again ate outside, for Clara had to be in the open air all day, if possible. The afternoon was spent in the cool shadow of the fir trees. Clara had many things to relate of Frankfurt and all the people that Heidi knew. It was not long before Peter arrived with his flock, but without even answering the girls' friendly greeting, he disappeared with a grim scowl. While Schwenli was being milked in the shed, Clara said, "Oh, Heidi, I feel as if I could not wait for my milk. Isn't it funny? All my life I have only eaten because I had to. Everything always tasted to me like cod liver oil, and I have often wished that I should never have to eat. And now I am so hungry." "Oh, yes, I know," Heidi replied. She had to think of the days in Frankfurt when her food seemed to stick in her throat. When at last the full bowls were brought by the old man, Clara, seizing hers, eagerly drank the contents in one draught and even finished before Heidi. "Please, may I have a little more?" she asked, holding out the bowl. Nodding, much pleased, the grandfather soon refilled it. This time he also brought with him a slice of bread and butter for the children. He had gone to Mayensass that afternoon to get the butter, and his trouble was well rewarded. They enjoyed it as if it had been the rarest dish. This evening Clara fell asleep the moment she lay down. 2 or 3 days passed in this pleasant way. The next brought a surprise. 2 strong porters came up the Alp, each carrying on his back a fresh, white bed. They also brought a letter from Grandmama, in which she thanked the children for their faithful writing and told them that the beds were meant for them. When they went asleep that night, they found their new beds in exactly the same position as their former ones had been. Clara's rapture in her new life grew greater every day, and she could not write enough of the grandfather's kindly care and of Heidi's entertaining stories. She told her grandmama that her first thought in the morning always was, "Thank God, I am still in the hut." Grandmama was highly pleased at those reports and put her projected visit off a little while, for she had found the ride pretty tiring. The grandfather took excellent care of his little patient, and no day passed on which he did not climb around to find the most savory herbs for Schwenli. The little goat thrived so that everybody could see it in the way her eyes were flashing. It was the 3rd week of Clara's stay. Every morning after the grandfather had carried her down, he said to her, "Would my Clara try to stand a little?" Clara always sighed. "Oh, it hurts me so." But though she would cling to him, he made her stand a little longer every day. This summer was the finest that had been for years. Day after day, the sun shone on a cloudless sky, and at night it would pour its purple, rosy light down on the rocks and snowfields till everything seemed to glow like fire. Heidi had told Clara over and over again of all the flowers on the pasture, of the masses of golden roses and the blue flowers that covered the ground. She had just been telling it again when a longing seized her, and jumping up she ran over to her grandfather, who was busy carving in the shop. "Oh, grandfather," she cried from afar, "won't you come with us to the pasture tomorrow? Oh, it's so beautiful up there now." "All right, I will," he replied. "But tell Clara that she must do something to please me. She must try to stand longer this evening for me." Heidi merrily came running with her message. Of course, Clara promised, for was it not her greatest wish to go up with Heidi to the pasture? When Peter returned this evening, he heard of the plan for the morrow. But for answer Peter only growled, nearly hitting poor Thistlefinch in his anger. The children had just resolved to stay awake all night to talk about the coming day, when their conversation suddenly ceased, and they were both peacefully slumbering. In her dreams, Clara saw before her a field that was thickly strewn with light blue flowers, while Heidi heard the eagle scream to her from above, "Come, come, come." Chapter 22. The next day dawned cloudless and fair. The grandfather was still with the children when Peter came climbing up, his goats kept at a good distance from him, to evade the rod, which was striking right and left. The truth was that the boy was terribly embittered and angry by the changes that had come. When he passed the hut in the morning, Heidi was always busy with the strange child, and in the evening it was the same. All summer long Heidi had not been up with him a single time. It was too much. And today she was coming at last, but again in company with this hateful stranger. It was then that Peter noticed the rolling chair standing near the hut. After carefully glancing about him, he rushed at the hated object and pushed it down the incline. The chair fairly flew away and had soon disappeared. Peter's conscience smote him now, and he raced up the Alp, not daring to pause till he had reached a blackberry bush. There he could hide when the uncle might appear. Looking down, he watched his fallen enemy tumbling downwards. Sometimes it was thrown high up into the air, to crash down again the next moment harder than ever. Pieces were falling from it right and left, and were blown about. Now the stranger would have to travel home and Heidi would be his again. But Peter had forgotten that a bad deed always brings a punishment. Heidi just now came out of the hut. The grandfather, with Clara, followed. Heidi at first stood still, and then, running right and left, she returned to the old man. "What does this mean? Have you rolled the chair away, Heidi?" he asked. "I am just looking for it everywhere, grandfather. You said it was beside the shop door," said the child, still hunting for the missing object. A strong wind was blowing, which at this moment violently closed the shop door. "Grandfather, the wind has done it," exclaimed Heidi eagerly. "Oh dear, if it has rolled all the way down to the village, it will be too late to go today. It will take us a long time to fetch it." "If it has rolled down there, we shall never get it any more, for it will be smashed to pieces," said the old man, looking down and measuring the distance from the corner of the hut. "I don't see how it happened," he remarked. "What a shame. Now I'll never be able to go up to the pasture," lamented Clara. "I am afraid I'll have to go home now. What a pity, what a pity." "You can find a way for her to stay. Grandfather, can't you?" "We'll go up to the pasture today, as we have planned. Then we shall see what further happens." The children were delighted, and the grandfather lost no time in getting ready. First he fetched a pile of covers, and seating Clara on a sunny spot on the dry ground, he got their breakfast. "I wonder why Peter is so late today," he said, leading his goats out of the shed. Then, lifting Clara up on one strong arm, he carried the covers on the other. "Now march," he cried. "The goats come with us." That suited Heidi, and with one arm round Schwenli and the other round Bailey, she wandered up. Her little companions were so pleased at having her with them again that they nearly crushed her with affection. What was their astonishment when, arriving on top, they saw Peter already lying on the ground, with his peaceful flock about him. "What did you mean by going by us like that? I'll teach you," called the uncle to him. Peter was frightened, for he knew the voice. "Nobody was up yet," the boy retorted. "Have you seen the chair?" asked the uncle again. "Which?" Peter growled. The uncle said no more. Unfolding the covers, he put Clara down on the dry grass. Then, when he had been assured of Clara's comfort, he got ready to go home. The three were to stay there till his return in the evening. When dinner time had come, Heidi was to prepare the meal and see that Clara got Schwenli's milk. The sky was a deep blue, and the snow on the peaks was glistening. The eagle was floating above the rocky crags. The children felt wonderfully happy. Now and then, one of the goats would come and lie down near them. Tender little Snowhopper came oftener than any and would rub her head against their shoulders. They had been sitting quietly for a few hours, drinking in the beauty about them, when Heidi suddenly began to long for the spot where so many flowers grew. In the evening it would be too late to see them, for they always shut their little eyes by then. "Oh, Clara," she said hesitatingly, "would you be angry if I went away from you a minute and left you alone? I want to see the flowers, but wait." Jumping away, she brought Clara some bunches of fragrant herbs and put them in her lap. Soon after she returned with little Snowhopper. "So, now you don't need to be alone," said Heidi. When Clara had assured her that it would give her pleasure to be left alone with the goats, Heidi started on her walk. Clara slowly handed one leaf after another to the little creature. It became more and more confiding, and cuddling close to the child, ate the herbs out of her hand. It was easy to see how happy it was to be away from the boisterous big goats, which often annoyed it. Clara felt a sensation of contentment such as she had never before experienced. She loved to sit there on the mountainside with the confiding little goat by her. A great desire rose in her heart that hour. She longed to be her own master and be able to help others instead of being helped by them. Many other thoughts and ideas rushed through her mind. How would it be to live up here in continual sunshine? The world seemed so joyous and wonderful all of a sudden. Premonitions of future, undreamt of happiness made her heart beat. Suddenly she threw both arms about the little goat and said, "Oh, little Snowhopper, how beautiful it is up here. If I could always stay with you." Heidi, in the meantime, had reached the spot where, as she had expected, the whole ground was covered with yellow rock roses. Near together in patches, the bluebells were nodding gently in the breeze. But all the perfume that filled the air came from the modest little brown flowers that hid their heads between the golden flower cups. Heidi stood enraptured, drawing in the perfumed air. Suddenly she turned and ran back to Clara, shouting to her from far, "Oh, you must come, Clara. It is so lovely there. In the evening it won't be so fine anymore. Don't you think I could carry you?" "But Heidi," Clara said, "of course you can't. You are much smaller than I am. Oh, I wish I could walk." Heidi meditated a little. Peter was still lying on the ground. He had been staring down for hours, unable to believe what he saw before him. He had destroyed the chair to get rid of the stranger, and there she was again, sitting right beside his playmate. Heidi now called to him to come down, but as reply he only grumbled, "Shan't come." "But you must come quickly, for I want you to help me. Quickly," urged the child. "Don't want to," sounded the reply. Heidi hurried up the mountain now and shouted angrily to the boy, "Peter, if you don't come this minute, I shall do something that you won't like." Those words scared Peter, for his conscience was not clear. His deed had rejoiced him till this moment, when Heidi seemed to talk as if she knew it all. What if the grandfather should hear about it? Trembling with fear, Peter obeyed. "I shall only come if you promise not to do what you said," insisted the boy. "No, no, I won't. Don't be afraid," said Heidi compassionately. "Just come along, it isn't so hard." Peter, on approaching Clara, was told to help raise the lame child from the ground on one side, while Heidi helped on the other. This went easily enough, but difficulties soon followed. Clara was not able to stand alone, and how could they get any further? "You must take me round the neck," said Heidi, who had seen what poor guides they made. The boy, who had never offered his arm to anybody in his life, had to be shown how first, before further efforts could be made. But it was too hard. Clara tried to set her feet forward, but got discouraged. "Press your feet on the ground more, and I am sure it will hurt you less," suggested Heidi. "Do you think so?" said Clara timidly. But obeying, she ventured a firmer step and soon another, uttering a little cry as she went. "Oh, it really has hurt me less," she said joyfully. "Try it again," Heidi urged her. Clara did and took another step, and then another and another still. Suddenly she cried aloud, "Oh, Heidi, I can do it. Oh, I really can. Just look, I can take steps, one after another." Heidi rapturously exclaimed, "Oh, Clara, can you really? Can you walk? Oh, can you take steps now? Oh, if only grandfather would come. Now you can walk, Clara, now you can walk," she kept on saying joyfully. Clara held on tight to the children, but with every new step she became more firm. "Now you can come up here every day," cried Heidi. "Now we can walk wherever we want to, and you don't have to be pushed in a chair anymore. Now you'll be able to walk all your life. Oh, what joy." Clara's greatest wish, to be able to be well like other people, had been fulfilled at last. It was not very far to the flowering field. Soon they reached it and sat down among the wealth of bloom. It was the first time that Clara had ever rested on the dry, warm earth. All about them the flowers nodded and exhaled their perfume. It was a scene of exquisite beauty. The two children could hardly grasp this happiness that had come to them. It filled their hearts brimming full and made them silent. Peter also lay motionless, for he had gone to sleep. Thus the hours flew, and the day was long past noon. Suddenly all the goats arrived, for they had been seeking the children. They did not like to graze in the flowers, and were glad when Peter awoke with their loud bleating. The poor boy was mightily bewildered, for he had dreamt that the rolling chair with the red cushions stood again before his eyes. On awaking, he had still seen the golden nails, but soon he discovered that they were nothing but flowers. Remembering his deed, he obeyed Heidi's instructions willingly. When they came back to their former place, Heidi lost no time in setting out the dinner. The bag was very full today, and Heidi hurried to fulfill her promise to Peter, who with bad conscience had understood her threat differently. She made 3 heaps of the good things, and when Clara and she were through, there was still a lot left for the boy. It was too bad that all this treat did not give him the usual satisfaction, for something seemed to stick in his throat. Soon after their belated dinner, the grandfather was seen climbing up the Alp. Heidi ran to meet him, confusedly telling him of the great event. The old man's face shone at this news. Going over to Clara, he said, "So you have risked it. Now we have one." Then picking her up, he put one arm around her waist, and the other one he stretched out as support, and with his help she marched more firmly than ever. Heidi jumped and bounded gaily by their side. In all this excitement, the grandfather did not lose his judgment, and before long lifted Clara on his arm to carry her home. He knew that too much exertion would be dangerous, and rest was needed for the tired girl. Peter, arriving in the village late that day, saw a large disputing crowd. They were all standing about an interesting object, and everybody pushed and fought for a chance to get nearest. It was no other than the chair. "I saw it when they carried it up," Peter heard the baker say. "I bet it was worth at least 500 francs. I should just like to know how it has happened." "The wind might have blown it down," remarked Barbara. who was staring open-mouthed at the beautiful velvet cushions. The uncle said so himself. "It is a good thing if nobody else has done it," continued the baker. "When the gentleman from Frankfurt hears what has happened, he'll surely find out all about it, and I should pity the culprit. I am glad I haven't been up on the for so long, else they might suspect me, as they would anybody who happened to be up there at the time." Many more opinions were uttered, but Peter had heard enough. He quietly slipped away and went home. What if they should find out he had done it? A policeman might arrive any time now, and they might take him away to prison. Peter's hair stood up on end at this alarming thought. He was so troubled when he came home that he did not answer any questions and even refused his dish of potatoes. Hurriedly creeping into bed, he groaned. "I am sure Peter has eaten sorrel again, and that makes him groan so," said his mother. "You must give him a little more bread in the morning, Brigida. Take a piece of mine," said the compassionate grandmother. When Clara and Heidi were lying in their beds that night, glancing up at the shining stars, Heidi remarked, "Didn't you think today, Clara, that it is fortunate God does not always give us what we pray for fervently, because he knows of something better?" "What do you mean, Heidi?" asked Clara. "You see, when I was in Frankfurt, I prayed and prayed to come home again, and when I couldn't, I thought he had forgotten me. But if I had gone away so soon, you would never have come here and would never have got well." Clara, becoming thoughtful, said, "But, Heidi, then we could not pray for anything any more, because we would feel that he always knows of something better." "But, Clara, we must pray to God every day to show we don't forget that all gifts come from him. Grandmama has told me that God forgets us if we forget him. But if some wish remains unfulfilled, we must show our confidence in him, for he knows best." "How did you ever think of that?" asked Clara. "Grandmama told me, but I know that it is so. We must thank God today that he has made you able to walk, Clara." "I am glad that you have reminded me, Heidi, for I have nearly forgotten it in my excitement." The children both prayed and sent their thanks up to heaven for the restoration of the invalid. Next morning, a letter was written to Grandmama, inviting her to come up to the Alp within a week's time, for the children had planned to take her by surprise. Clara hoped then to be able to walk alone, with Heidi for her guide. The following days were happier still for Clara. Every morning she awoke with her heart singing over and over again, "Now I am well. Now I can walk like other people." She progressed and took longer walks every day. Her appetite grew amazingly, and the grandfather had to make larger slices of the bread and butter that, to his delight, disappeared so rapidly. He had to fill bowl after bowl of the foaming milk for the hungry children. In that way they reached the end of the week that was to bring the grandmama. Chapter 23. A day before her visit, the grandmama had sent a letter to announce her coming. Peter brought it up with him next morning. The grandfather was already before the hut with the children and his merry goats. His face looked proud as he contemplated the rosy faces of the girls and the shining hair of his two goats. Peter, approaching, neared the uncle slowly. As soon as he had delivered the letter, he sprang back shyly, looking about him as if he was afraid. Then with a leap he started off. "I should like to know why Peter behaves like the big Turk when he is afraid of the rod," said Heidi, watching his strange behavior. "Maybe Peter fears a rod that he deserves," said the old man. All the way Peter was tormented with fear. He could not help thinking of the policeman who was coming from Frankfurt to fetch him to prison. It was a busy morning for Heidi, who put the hut in order for the expected visitor. The time went by quickly, and soon everything was ready to welcome the good grandmama. The grandfather also returned from a walk, on which he had gathered a glorious bunch of deep blue gentians. The children, who were sitting on the bench, exclaimed for joy when they saw the glowing flowers. Heidi, getting up from time to spy down the path, suddenly discovered Grandmama sitting on a white horse and accompanied by two men. One of them carried plenty of wraps, for without those the lady did not dare to pay such a visit. The party came nearer and nearer, and soon reached the top. "What do I see? Clara, what is this? Why are you not sitting in your chair? How is this possible?" cried the grandmamma in alarm, dismounting hastily. Before she had quite reached the children, she threw her arms up in great excitement. "Clara, is that really you? You have red, round cheeks, my child. I hardly know you any more." Grandmamma was going to rush at her grandchild when Heidi slipped from the bench, and Clara, taking her arm, they quietly took a little walk. The grandmamma was rooted to the spot from fear. What was this? Upright and firm, Clara walked beside her friend. When they came back, their rosy faces beamed. Rushing toward the children, the grandmother hugged them over and over again. Looking over to the bench, she beheld the uncle, who sat there smiling. Taking Clara's arm in hers, she walked over to him, continually venting her delight. When she reached the old man, she took both his hands in hers and said, "My dear, dear uncle, what have we to thank you for? This is your work, your care and nursing." "But our Lord's sunshine and mountain air," interrupted the uncle, smiling. Then Clara called, "Yes, and also Schwenli's good, delicious milk. Grandmamma, you ought to see how much goat milk I can drink now. Oh, it is so good." "Indeed, I can see that from your cheeks," said the grandmamma, smiling. "No, I hardly recognize you anymore. You have become broad and round. I never dreamt that you could get so stout and tall. Oh, Clara, is it really true? I cannot look at you enough. But now I must telegraph your father to come. I shan't tell him anything about you, for it will be the greatest joy of all his life. My dear uncle, how are we going to manage it? Have you sent the men away?" "I have, but I can easily send the goat herd." So they decided that Peter should take the message. The uncle immediately whistled so loud that it resounded from all sides. Soon Peter arrived, white with fear, for he thought his doom had come. But he only received a paper that was to be carried to the post office of the village. Relieved for the moment, Peter set out. Now all the happy friends sat down round the table, and Grandmamma was told how the miracle had happened. Often the talk was interrupted by exclamations of surprise from Grandmamma, who still believed it was all a dream. How could this be her pale, weak little Clara? The children were in a constant state of joy to see how their surprise had worked. Meanwhile, Mr. Sesame, having finished his business in Paris, was also preparing a surprise. Without writing his mother, he traveled to Ragatz on a sunny summer morning. He had arrived on this very day, some hours after his mother's departure, and now, taking a carriage, he drove to Mayenfeld. The long ascent to the Alp from there seemed very weary and far to the traveler. When would he reach the goatherd's hut? There were many little roads branching off in several directions, and sometimes Mr. Sesame doubted if he had taken the right path. But not a soul was near, and no sound could be heard except the rustling of the wind and the hum of little insects. A merry little bird was singing on a larch tree, but nothing more. Standing still and cooling his brow, he saw a boy running down the hill at topmost speed. Mr. Sesame called to him, but with no success, for the boy kept at a shy distance. "Now, my boy, can't you tell me if I am on the right path to the hut where Heidi lives and the people from Frankfurt are staying?" A dull sound of terror was the only reply. Peter shot off and rushed head over heels down the mountainside, turning wild somersaults on his perilous way. His course resembled the course his enemy had taken some days ago. "What a funny, bashful mountaineer," Mr. Sesame remarked to himself, thinking that the appearance of a stranger had upset this simple son of the Alps. After watching the downward course of the boy a little while, he soon proceeded on his way. In spite of the greatest effort, Peter could not stop himself and kept rolling on. But his fright and terror were still more terrible than his bumps and blows. This stranger was the policeman, that was a certain fact. At last, being thrown against a bush, he clutched it wildly. "Good, here's another one," a voice near Peter said. "I wonder who is going to be pushed down tomorrow, looking like a half-open potato bag." The village baker was making fun of him. For a little rest after his weary work, he had quietly watched the boy. Peter regained his feet and slunk away. How did the baker know the chair had been pushed? He longed to go home to bed and hide, for there alone he felt safe. But he had to go up to the goats, and the uncle had clearly told him to come back as quickly as he could. Groaning, he limped away up to the Alp. How could he run now with his fear and all his poor, sore limbs? Mr. Sesame had reached the hut soon after meeting Peter, and felt reassured. Climbing further with renewed courage, he at last saw his goal before him, but not without long and weary exertion. He saw the hut above him, and the swaying fir trees. Mr. Sesame eagerly hurried to encounter his beloved child. They had seen him long ago from the hut, and a treat was prepared for him that he never suspected. As he made the last steps, he saw two forms coming towards him. A tall girl with light hair and rosy face was leaning on Heidi, whose dark eyes sparkled with keen delight. Mr. Sesame stopped short, staring at this vision. Suddenly big tears rushed from his eyes, for this shape before him recalled sweet memories. Clara's mother had looked exactly like this fair maiden. Mr. Sesame at this moment did not know if he was awake or dreaming. "Papa, don't you know me any more?" Clara called with beaming eyes. "Have I changed so much?" Mr. Sesame rushed up to her, folding her in his arms. "Yes, you have changed. How is it possible? Is it really true? Is it really you, Clara?" asked the overjoyed father, embracing her again and then gazing at her as she stood tall and firm by his side. His mother joined them now, for she wanted to see the happiness of her son. "What do you say to this, my son? Isn't our surprise finer than yours?" she greeted him. "But come over to our benefactor now, I mean the uncle." "Yes, indeed, I also must greet our little Heidi," said the gentleman, shaking Heidi's hand. "Well, always fresh and happy on the mountain. I guess I don't need to ask, for no alpine rose can look more blooming. Ah, child, what joy this is to me." With beaming eyes, the child looked at the kind gentleman who had always been so good to her. Her heart throbbed in sympathy with his joy. While the two men, who had at last approached each other, were conversing, Grandmamma walked over to the grove. There, under the fir trees, another surprise awaited her. A beautiful bunch of wondrously blue gentians stood as if they had grown there. "How exquisite, how wonderful, what a sight!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Heidi, come here, have you brought me those? Oh, they are beautiful." The children had joined her, Heidi assuring her that it was another person's deed. "Oh, Grandmamma, up on the pasture it looks just like that," Clara remarked. "Just guess who brought you the flowers." At that moment a rustle was heard, and they saw Peter, who was trying to sneak up behind the trees to avoid the hut. Immediately the old lady called to him, for she thought that Peter himself had picked the flowers for her. He must be creeping away out of sheer modesty, the kind lady thought. To give him his reward, she called. "Come here, my boy, don't be afraid." Petrified with fear, Peter stood still. What had gone before had robbed him of his courage. He thought now that all was over with him. With his hair standing up on end and his pale face distorted by anguish, he approached. "Come straight to me, boy," the old lady encouraged him. "Now tell me, boy, if you have done that." In his anxiety, Peter did not see the grandmamma's finger that pointed to the flowers. He only saw the uncle standing near the hut, looking at him penetratingly, and beside him the policeman, the greatest horror for him in the world. Trembling in every limb, Peter answered, "Yes." "Well, but what are you so frightened about?" Because it is broken and can never be mended again," Peter said, his knees tottering under him. The grandmamma now walked over to the hut. "My dear uncle," she asked kindly, "is this poor lad out of his mind?" "Not at all," was the reply. "Only the boy was the wind which blew away the wheelchair. He is expecting the punishment he well deserves." Grandmamma was very much surprised, for she vowed that Peter looked far from wicked. Why should he have destroyed the chair? The uncle told her that he had noticed many signs of anger in the boy since Clara's advent on the Alp. He assured her that he had suspected the boy from the beginning. "My dear uncle," the old lady said with animation, "we must not punish him further. We must be just. It was very hard on him when Clara robbed him of Heidi, who is and was his greatest treasure. When he had to sit alone day after day, it roused him to a passion which drove him to this wicked deed. It was rather foolish, but we all get so when we get angry." The lady walked over to the boy again, who was still quivering with fear. Sitting down on the bench, she began. "Come, Peter, I'll tell you something. Stop trembling and listen. You pushed the chair down to destroy it. You knew very well that it was wicked and deserved punishment. You tried very hard to conceal it, did you not? But if somebody thinks that nobody knows about a wicked deed, he is wrong. God always knows it. As soon as he finds that a man is trying to conceal an evil he has done, he wakens a little watchman in his heart, who keeps on pricking the person with a thorn till all his rest is gone. He keeps on calling to the evildoer, 'Now you'll be found out. Now your punishment is near.' His joy has flown, for fear and terror take its place. Have you not just had such an experience, Peter?" Peter nodded, all contrite. He certainly had experienced this. "You have made a mistake," the grandmamma continued, "by thinking that you would hurt Clara by destroying her chair. It has so happened that what you have done has been the greatest good for her. She would probably never have tried to walk if her chair had been there. If she should stay here, she might even go up to the pasture every single day. Do you see, Peter? God can turn a misdeed to the good of the injured person and bring trouble on the offender. Have you understood me, Peter? Remember the little watchman when you long to do a wicked deed again. Will you do that?" "Yes, I shall," Peter replied, still fearing the policeman who had not left yet. "So now that matter is all settled," said the old lady in conclusion. "Now tell me if you have a wish, my boy, for I am going to give you something by which to remember your friends from Frankfurt. What is it? What would you like to have?" Peter, lifting his head, stared at the grandmamma with round, astonished eyes. He was confused by this sudden change of prospect. Being again urged to utter a wish, he saw at last that he was saved from the power of the terrible man. He felt as if the most crushing load had fallen off him. He knew now that it was better to confess at once when something had gone wrong, so he said, "I have also lost the paper." Reflecting a while, the grandmamma understood and said, "That is right. Always confess what is wrong, then it can be settled. And now, what would you like to have?" So Peter could choose everything in the world he wished. His brain got dizzy. He saw before him all the wonderful things in the fair in Mayenfeld. He had often stood there for hours, looking at the pretty red whistles and the little knives. Unfortunately, Peter had never possessed more than half what those objects cost. He stood thinking, not able to decide, when a bright thought struck him. 10 pennies, said Peter with decision. That certainly is not too much, the old lady said with a smile, taking out of her pocket a big, round taler, on top of which she laid 20 pennies. Now I'll explain this to you. Here you have as many times 10 pennies as there are weeks in the year. You'll be able to spend one every Sunday through the year. All my life, Peter asked quite innocently. The grandmamma began to laugh so heartily at this that the two men came over to join her. Laughingly, she said, "You shall have it, my boy. I will put it in my will, and then you will do the same, my son. Listen, Peter the goatherd shall have a 10-penny piece weekly as long as he lives." Mr. Sesame nodded. Peter, looking at his gift, said solemnly, "God be thanked." Jumping and bounding, he ran away. His heart was so light that he felt he could fly. A little later, the whole party sat round the table holding a merry feast. After dinner, Clara, who was lively as never before, said to her father, "Oh, Papa, if you only knew all the things Grandfather did for me. It would take many days to tell you. I shall never forget them all my life. Oh, if we could please him only half as much as what he did for me." "It is my greatest wish, too, dear child," said her father. I have been trying to think of something all the time. We have to show our gratitude in some way." Accordingly, Mr. Sesame walked over to the old man and began. "My dear friend, may I say one word to you? I am sure you believe me when I tell you that I have not known any real joy for years. What was my wealth to me when I could not cure my child and make her happy? With the help of the Lord, you have made her well. You have given her a new life. Please tell me how to show my gratitude to you. I know I shall never be able to repay you, but what is in my power I shall do. Have you any request to make? Please let me know." The uncle had listened quietly and had looked at the happy father. "Mr. Sesame, you can be sure that I also am repaid by the great joy I experience at the recovery of Clara," said the uncle firmly. "I thank you for your kind offer, Mr. Sesame. As long as I live, I have enough for me and the child. But I have one wish. If this could be fulfilled, my life would be free of care." "Speak, my dear friend," urged Clara's father. "I am old," continued the uncle, "and shall not live many years. When I die, I cannot leave Heidi anything. The child has no relations except one, who even might try to take advantage of her if she could. If you would give me the assurance, Mr. Sesame, that Heidi will never be obliged to go into the world and earn her bread, you would amply repay me for what I was able to do for you and Clara." "My dear friend, there is no question of that," began Mr. Sesame. "The child belongs to us. I promise at once that we shall look after her so that there will not be any need of her ever earning her bread. We all know that she is not fashioned for a life among strangers. Nevertheless, she has made some true friends, and one of them will be here very shortly. Dr. Klassen is just now completing his last business in Frankfurt. He intends to take your advice and live here. He has never felt so happy as with you and Heidi. The child will have two protectors near her, and I hope with God's will that they may be spared a long, long time." "And may it be God's will," added the grandmamma, who with Heidi had joined them, shaking the uncle tenderly by the hand. Putting her arms around the child, she said, "Heidi, I want to know if you also have a wish." "Yes, indeed, I have," said Heidi, pleased. "Tell me what it is, child." "I should like to have my bed from Frankfurt with the 3 high pillows and the thick, warm cover. Then grandmother will be able to keep warm and won't have to wear her shawl in bed. Oh, I'll be so happy when she won't have to lie with her head lower than her heels, hardly able to breathe." Heidi had said all this in one breath. She was so eager. "Oh dear, I had nearly forgotten what I meant to do. I am so glad you have reminded me, Heidi. If God sends us happiness, we must think of those who have many privations. I shall telegraph immediately for the bed, and if Miss Rottenmeier sends it off at once, it can be here in 2 days. I hope the poor blind grandmother will sleep better when it comes." Heidi, in her happiness, could hardly wait to bring the old woman the good news. Soon it was resolved that everybody should visit the grandmother, who had been left alone so long. Before starting, however, Mr. Sesame revealed his plans. He proposed to travel through Switzerland with his mother and Clara. He would spend the night in the village, so as to fetch Clara from the Alm next morning for the journey. From there they would go first to Ragatz and then further. The telegram was to be mailed that night. Clara's feelings were divided, for she was sorry to leave the Alp, but the prospect of the trip delighted her. When everything was settled, they all went down, the uncle carrying Clara, who could not have risked the lengthy walk. All the way down, Heidi told the old lady of her friends in the hut, the cold they had to bear in winter and the little food they had. Brigida was just hanging up Peter's shirt to dry when the whole company arrived. Rushing into the house, she called to her mother, "Now they are all going away. Uncle is going too, carrying the lame child." "Oh, must it really be?" sighed the grandmother. "Have you seen whether they took Heidi away? Oh, if she only could give me her hand once more. Oh, I long to hear her voice once more." The same moment the door was flung open, and Heidi held her tight. "Grandmother, just think. My bed with the 3 pillows and the thick cover is coming from Frankfurt. Grandmamma has said that it will be here in 2 days." Heidi thought that grandmother would be beside herself with joy, But the old woman, smiling sadly, said, "Oh, what a good lady she must be. I know I ought to be glad she is taking you with her, Heidi, but I don't think I shall survive it long." But nobody has said so, the grandmamma, who had overheard those words, said kindly. Pressing the old woman's hand, she continued, "It is out of the question. Heidi will stay with you and make you happy. To see Heidi again, we will come up every year to the Alm, for we have many reasons to thank the Lord there." Immediately, the face of the grandmother lighted up, and she cried tears of joy. "Oh, what wonderful things God is doing for me," said the grandmother, deeply touched. "How good people are to trouble themselves about such a poor old woman as I. Nothing in this world strengthens the belief in a good Father in heaven more than this mercy and kindness shown to a poor, useless little woman like me." "My dear grandmother," said Mrs. Sesame, "before God in heaven we are all equally miserable and poor. Woe to us if he should forget us. But now we must say goodbye. Next year we shall come to see you just as soon as we come up the Alp. We shall never forget you." With that, Mrs. Sesame shook her hand. It was some time before she was allowed to leave, however, because the grandmother thanked her over and over again and invoked all heaven's blessings on her and her house. Mr. Sesame and his mother went on down, while Clara was carried up to spend her last night in the hut. Next morning, Clara shed hot tears at parting from the beloved place, where such gladness had been hers. Heidi consoled her with plans for the coming summer that was to be even more happy than this one had been. Mr. Sesame then arrived, and a few last parting words were exchanged. Clara, half crying, suddenly said, "Please give my love to Peter and the goats, Heidi. Please greet Schwenli especially from me, for she has helped a great deal in making me well." What could I give her? "You can send her salt, Clara. You know how fond she is of that," advised little Heidi. "Oh, I will surely do that," Clara assented. "I'll send her 100 pounds of salt as a remembrance from me." It was time to go now, and Clara was able to ride proudly beside her father. Standing on the edge of the slope, Heidi waved her hand, her eyes following Clara till she had disappeared. "The bed has arrived. Grandmother sleeps so well every night now that before long she will be stronger than ever. Grandmamma has not forgotten the cold winter on the Alp and has sent a great many warm covers and shawls to the goatherd's hut. Grandmother can wrap herself up now and will not have to sit shivering in a corner." In the village, a large building is in progress. The doctor has arrived and is living at present in his old quarters. He has taken the uncle's advice and has bought the old ruins that sheltered Heidi and her grandfather the winter before. He is rebuilding for himself the portion with the fine apartment already mentioned. The other side is being prepared for Heidi and her grandfather. The doctor knows that his friend is an independent man and likes to have his own dwelling. Belly and Schwenli, of course, are not forgotten. They will spend the winter in a good, solid stable that is being built for them. The doctor and the uncle become better friends every day. When they overlook the progress of the building, they generally come to speak of Heidi. They both look forward to the time when they will be able to move into the house with their merry charge. They have agreed to share together the pleasure and responsibility that Heidi brings them. The uncle's heart is filled with gratitude too deep for any words when the doctor tells him that he will make ample provision for the child. Now her grandfather's heart is free of care, for if he is called away, another father will take care of Heidi and love her in his stead. At the moment when our story closes, Heidi and Peter are sitting in grandmother's hut. The little girl has so many interesting things to relate, and Peter is trying so hard not to miss anything, that in their eagerness they are not aware that they are near the happy grandmother's chair. All summer long they have hardly met, and very many wonderful things have happened. They are all glad at being together again, and it is hard to tell who is the happiest of the group. I think Brigida's face is more radiant than any, for Heidi has just told her the story of the perpetual 10-penny piece. Finally, the grandmother says, "Heidi, please read me a song of thanksgiving and praise. I feel that I must praise and thank the Lord for the blessings he has brought to us all." The end.